Sweet little intro, that, bro.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's the Muslim Metaphysician, and I got my two friends here with me from TAP. We got Yusuf Ponders and brother Abdul here. And just to catch you guys up on speed of what's happened, I recently had a debate with a Christian YouTuber named Vin from Vin and Sori channel. So people can go take a look at it. I have in the description of the video, I have a link to the original debate. If people didn't watch it yet, I suggest you go watch it after this. But what we're going to do is we're going to play clips from the debate and go through it, try to get through as much as we can with making, the most important points that we feel need to be addressed. But before we do that, I want to give a little bit of background story to how this debate came about and why it happened. So what happened is that for those who don't know, on the EA show, the host there was an atheist. His name's Justin. He just recently became a Muslim, alhamdulillah. And and he was in contact with Vin. Also, brother Abdul was in contact with Vin, even some other Christians behind the scenes, because when Justin was an atheist, he posted a group post. I don't know what group it was, but Vin saw it. Justin was basically using the LPT, or arguing against the logical incoherence of the Trinity, showing what it was. And Vin responded to it, and he made a post on it. And then after that, he had messages back and forth with Abdul, Justin, and a few other people. And within that, he actually called me dishonest and said that I was being dishonest in my presentation. I was, for some reason, leaving out that Christians believe that there's a distinction between being and person, as if I didn't know that. And people can go and look, because on my video series on the Trinity, I explained that very clearly in the prior video. But Vin thought it was dishonest for some reason that I didn't make that clear. And then he repeated it again in the debate. But after that, for about the past 6 months or so, we've been trying to schedule a debate with Vin, and it seemed to me as if he was ducking me, because he was posting videos on YouTube and all the time doing these things, and yet he wasn't responding to the messages from Christians, Muslims, and atheists trying to reach out to him to put this together. And then he finally surfaced a couple days ago and agreed to have the discussion on Justin's channel. And so that happened. And then this video here is going to be a review of that. So before we get started with the clips, Abdul or Yusuf, do you guys have anything you want to add as far as an introduction to the video?
Yeah, so I had a little watch of your thingy videos as well, not too long ago. And you definitely make mention of a distinction between the being and the person. In your critiques of Christianity, I think you probably mentioned that consistently in every video. So I'm not 100% sure how he would have made that claim. Either he wasn't paying attention, but saying this, and as we're going to see when we start watching the video, it just came across like he was very much out of his depths and he was very nervous. And you get this impression almost instantly. The moment he's on, he has these little awkward comments, and he seems very jittery. And there's you'll see as well, there's a moment where it's like right at the beginning, Jake looks as chilled and as cool as a cucumber, and you're laughing. You're like, I didn't say that. And he's basically saying that you've already lost the debate, you've already conceded. Which, if that was the case, why did he carry on? Like, why didn't he just end it there? And you were just pointing out quite rightfully that wasn't what you did. And we'll see, because he even says, watch it from the beginning. So inshallah, we'll take his advice now and we'll show. And it was so clearly a misapplication of what you had said in reply to what he had said. But he's telling you to calm down. He's like, calm down. But he's looking frustrated. he's looking very upset and like nervous and again jittery, and he's got a lot of these awkward hand movements and that, and it's just, it was a bit of it just kind of deteriorated pretty much from the entry point. And I don't think we're going to be able to go through the whole thing. I don't think we even really need to, because the last half, at least anyway, it was an absolute state in terms of like what was meant to be a discussion. And yeah, I think probably maybe we could say to Jake, you could have tried to have been calmer with him, but I think it was at such a point where it was just, I don't know how much better it would have been even if you were. And I can understand how it would have been frustrating talking to him, but I think you did try at least. Like you could see at the beginning, you were like calm, collected, and then he kept doing these dishonest kind of things, confusing things, using vague notions. He'd drift from referring to one kind of thing when he was talking about this universal principles or universally accepted principles. He'd start talking about one thing there, and then he'd move on and completely change category. So when he was directing it to you, it was like, give me something where all philosophers agree on this, and then he would switch from asking for all philosophers to just one. And with the Leibniz law, you could have just said Leibniz. It's the law was named after him. He considered it universal. So that would have been enough. But yeah, I won't go too much into it. Obviously, we'll go through the video and we'll start covering these points as we get to them.
Yeah, Abdul, you have anything?
Yeah, I just want to say that about the video that that he commented on initially about the logical problem of Trinity. He did call you dishonest, and the problem is I sent him the other videos where you make the being person distinction. First, I told him in text, which he's seen. And I sent him the other videos where you make the being person distinction. I told him this is a series where if Jake actually presents models that try to solve the logical problem of the Trinity. And the problem I have is that he never replied to that. And so when you accuse someone of something as seriously as dishonestly, you're accusing them of being dishonest, and then you're given evidence that they're not being dishonest. I expected Vin to respond and say, okay, I take that back. He wasn't dishonest, right? But I've realized, and I've always liked Vin, to be honest. And Vin, I've considered him a friend, and none of this is personal, really. But some of these things are disappointing because he's been making sweeping generalizations about Muslims to me in private as well. He's been telling me, you Muslims, whenever you go out there, you lie and you dishonestly represent Christianity. He made a similar comment publicly on my friend's page a few days ago, and the problem is when you make that kind of accusation and you're shown that that isn't the case, you should come back and have something to say. I haven't experienced that with Vin, and the issue is, aside from that, the issue is it doesn't seem like Vin really understood what the logical problem of the Trinity is, to be honest, because the way Jake laid it out in that video was really the logical problem of the Trinity as referred to by Christian theologians and philosophers, which is, it's a term coined by them, not by Jake, and that literally was the logical problem of the Trinity. And the fact that he thinks that there's an aspect of dishonesty there shows, at least to me, it shows that he's not familiar with what the logical problem of the Trinity is. And I think this debate actually demonstrated that conclusively.
Yeah, which touches also on what I said there about him being sort of out of his depth a little bit, which would make sense and sort of explain his jitteriness and his nervousness. At the moment, because this is my first experience of him. I've not really seen much of him before.
Yeah, me too. I didn't really see much of him at all. I just heard his name a few times, but I don't really know him at all. Yeah, and the other thing, Abdul, is he repeated it in the discussion again. He said that, oh, Jake, you didn't mention being person distinction in the video, so you're being dishonest. So he kind of repeated the same accusation even live in the discussion.
Doubling down.
Yeah, double down on it. But what do you say we get right into it? Yusuf, you said that you wanted to start with the comment he made about fit.
Yeah, just that really offhand comment. He mentions your hat, and he's like, "Oh, I thought, you know," and then he talks about the secular make America secular hat. I mean, we'll pull it up. We'll let him say it himself. But I think when was it, about the 4-minute mark?
Yeah, 4:53, somewhere around there.
I don't assume.
Oh, one sec. Let me.
Yeah, that should be good around there.
Is this coming through?
Maybe you can get a Make America Sharia hat. And
no.
Well, you're a baby. You got to get into the fiqh, bro. Get into the fiqh, and then that'll change. Or you won't be a Muslim. That's a different topic. Okay.
See, it was such a cringe opening move, and like to just go, well, you know, you won't be a Muslim no more. Oh, now let's go on. And then to just kind of, if we play that again, to try as quickly as possible to move from that statement.
You're a baby. You got to get into the fiqh, bro. Get into the fiqh, and then that'll change. Or you won't be a Muslim. That's a different topic. Okay. I wanted to do a quick.
That's a different topic. Okay. I want to do.
Can I say something about that? Because Vin does this a lot, and like this is a discussion about the Trinity. This is discussing the Trinity, and Vin wants to, like, from the outset say something about Islam to be like, you know what? If I'm going down, I'm pulling you down with me.
Yeah, poisoning the well as well.
Yeah, he's poisoning the well, and he's making it seem as if, like, he made a remark in the middle of the video about, you know, the Bible is sufficient for me, and I've seen him make this remark several times, that as a Christian, the Bible is sufficient for me, but Muslims need the Quran plus the Sunnah. You know, going off on these tangents and red herrings that have absolutely nothing to do with the debate. If you want to have a debate about scripture and talk about Muslim sources and what the sources of revelation are and compare them to the Christian sources, sure, that might be relevant. Although you'd probably have to approach it in a more objective way, where you're not really being, where you're being civil and not really trying to ridicule your interlocutor's beliefs. But then the point is that Vin does this, and this is important to note. I want to get into the substance of the debate, but the reason why this needs to be mentioned is that Vin's approach is not really about substance. Vin makes a lot of snide remarks through the debate, and he has this, you know, he puts on these mannerisms that give you the impression that, you know, I know what I'm talking about. I'm dominating. And he makes these snide remarks in the middle of the debate. Like, he'd turn to his partner and be like, see, I told you. And he'd have this big grin on his face that, you know what, I got you, man. And for me, I think, I've seen Vin speak a lot. And I think this is Vin's, like, fundamental strategy. It's his prime approach to winning debates. It's I don't want to say this in a bad way, but it is manipulative, and it's basically what he did here, because we're going to go through the debate, and I think substance wise, what Vin had to offer was very little, and we're gonna list the points that were actually of substance as they relate to the topic of this debate.
Also, so the thing is I don't even want to attribute this to like an innate part of his character necessarily. I don't think, for me, when I was watching it, it doesn't seem like this is him in his normal state of being. I think it was a consequence.
No, it's like a sport. It's like a sport. You want to win the debate, right? I don't think Vin is a bad guy, and I said I like Vin, right? But then Vin wants to win a debate, and I think in certain debates he'll want to win it at any expense. Yeah. I think it just really failed this time because Jake wasn't having any of it.
Yeah, and I think it's probably important to sort of stress here, I can understand why he wants to win it. Obviously, like, it's not completely digress from the whole purpose of him wanting to discuss this at all. He's a very sincere Christian. I think he really does believe in his doctrine. It is important to him. He does believe Jesus is his God. And so obviously there's a lot at stake here in this discussion. And so I get it. You know, he wants this to be, without any flaw, without any problem in it. because it is fundamental to his belief. And if there is any problem, obviously this is going to sort of start to wither away. So there is something at stake here. There is, and not just something arbitrary, but something important, fundamental to his life, to his family life, to his social life. And so I get that. And obviously, as we're going to see now, as we're going through it, you can see he's nervous. You can see he's and I get this as well. Like I get nervous with like debate atmospheres as well. I prefer more relaxed discussions and back and forths, and having the time to be able to think about what you want to say, so you don't say something silly. That's more my style. Inshallah, I'm going to try and get myself to a position where I can maybe do debates, but I don't want to get into them at a moment where I get nervous, because I know this is the kind of thing that happens when you do get into debates, when they make you nervous, that things deteriorate very quickly, and it becomes more of a thing about ego. But yeah, you wanted to add anything?
No, nothing really. If you want to go to the second one, which was around 11:21 on the video, where he brings up this supposed his model, explaining that there's 1 in A and 3 in B, and then he asked me if it's a contradiction, and then later says that by me saying no, that I conceded the debate, which was complete dishonesty on his part.
I think we should get into the substance of the debate now. So I think this is where it starts, right? His presentation, and of course, it's obvious that this isn't a contradiction. This isn't where the contradiction comes into play. Now, later on, and you acknowledge that, of course, everybody acknowledges that this category distinction here, in this slide, there's no contradiction whatsoever. It's when you link them together and make the relation between the being and person clear, as it should be within Trinitarian formulations, that's when the contradiction comes into play. And I think Vin doesn't realize that, because I think Vin asks you the question later on. He says you conceded. You say, no, I haven't. The reason you say, no, I haven't, is because you're referring to his entire presentation. The reason you should be referring to his entire presentation is because it was in response to the context of the way you guys were talking, is with regard to Leibniz's law of identity, right? Now, Leibniz's law of identity doesn't come into play here. If Vin was asking you about this slide, then Vin doesn't understand how Leibniz's law applies to the Trinity, because it comes later on. If he wasn't, and he was asking you about the whole thing, I think he knows you didn't concede that the whole thing is not a contradiction.
No,
so
he knows. Get it. Yeah, he's just being dishonest.
But go ahead. It might not even be that. It might not even be that. It might be because we're going to get to it. But there's a moment where he says that this is just like a table form, and what follows it is a verbalized form of that. So he's making this distinction that from this table, that necessarily infers the particular doctrine he's putting forward. And that's not the case, because this is missing lots of information. There's, it literally has only the bare bones. You've got like one category being, another category persons, and then you've got numbers and names in those columns. But there's as we know, there's I don't know, I couldn't even tell you how many, but there's a load of heresies that have developed from just this simple look at this, and then trying to move from that to how do we understand that with reference to scripture. So you've got this thing, and Vin, etc.
There's a problem. I think Vin thinks that this category distinction solves the logical problem of the Trinity. I'm quite sure he does, because if you remember what we were talking about earlier and his video response to Jake, he thought that the reason Jake was being dishonest was because he left out the being person distinction, as if this being person distinction is in and of itself.
Yeah, he thinks that's the solution. End all be all.
Yeah, he thinks it's the solution, but that's not what it is. It's just the starting point. I mean, so I think you should play it in context where you talk about the law.
Yeah,
and then
he
says you conceded, because I know.
It gets to that eventually, so we can we've already prefaced it, so we know, like, whoever's watching now, they're going to know what it is they need to listen out for specifically. And we'll
but just keep in mind,
well.
because whoever's watching, keep in mind that Vin, what he's going to want to say, or what he wants to say even in the video, is that Jake's concession with regard to that category distinction, that's the one he was referring to, and Jake was like lying or something when he said he didn't concede. Jake very rightly said he didn't concede because this was in reference to Leibniz's law, which is concerned with the entire formulation, not that initial category distinction.
Yeah.
So you just need to be like, because I've had to listen to this again, by the way. I thought Jake was wrong initially when he said he didn't concede, but then I went back and looking at the context, it's quite obvious what they're talking about. So let's
and just to kind of preface, so the gap between where we were, he brings up his slides, and to begin with, he just explains what the logical law of non-contradiction is, which in short is just like something cannot be A and the negation of A simultaneously. That probably would have sufficed. But he gave like a nice sort of extended explanation of that, and then here I think he brings up this table. So I'll start at 11.
Yeah, that's fine.
Bismillah.
Billion for rock. There's probably, I don't know, 30 trillion rocks in the universe, right? And we got 8 billion humans. There is only one being of Allah. We agree.
Yep.
But Christians say that instead of being unipersonal, that God is tripersonal. Now, I'd like to ask everybody, we talked about A and not A, and B and not B, and what contradictions are. What Christians are saying is that God is 1 in A and 3 in B. Isn't that true?
1 in A and 3 in B. If you want to use those terms, yeah.
Okay. Because A is being.
Some people aren't comfortable with it. For example, if people go to my channel and watch my most recent interview with a Christian scholar, I asked him specifically about this, and he wasn't really too happy with the word being because he thought it was too vague. So maybe that's something we can get into. But if you're fine with it, that's fine.
Okay. So what we're saying is that we're 1 in A and 3 in B. Is that true? Is that what Christians are saying about the Trinity?
Yeah.
So there's no contradiction, is there?
Not yet, no.
Okay. So then when you go to slide,
just to kind of hone in on that. So he's let's just go back a couple of seconds.
Yeah, he said, so there's no contradiction, is there? And I said, not yet, no. And then when you fast forward, when he goes on to the next slide, and he mentions this, it's somewhere around the 19-minute mark, I think, where we have this, where he says, well, I conceded somehow that the formulation is not logically contradictory. He's referring back to this point where I said, based on this slide of simply saying 1 being 3 persons without any context of what that means and how they relate to one another. No, not yet. But I already anticipated that it was going to happen shortly after that. And when it did, then I said that it was contradictory and problematic. And then he said, well, I said it wasn't before. And he tried to make it seem like I was contradicting myself, but I wasn't. And I think he honestly knew what he was doing and he was being dishonest. And the reason I say that is because he was dishonest several of the times throughout the discussion to where I can see a trend now. And I think that he was purposely doing that.
I'll for the sake of just being, I don't want to say devil's advocate, but for the sake of just kind of fighting for the opposition side here for a second, I'm going to say that I don't think he was necessarily being dishonest. I think he comes across as someone who really does believe what he's saying. And I think this is tied to him being anxious about getting into this discussion with you. Because when you're nervous, when you're sort of in this sort of fight and flight mode, you're just kind of reacting on instinct. And I was getting the impression that he did think, because one of his issues is he's constantly making these movements from one category to another category. And he doesn't seem to be able to recognize that he's making these movements to separate things. And I think this is another example of that. And we're going to see this when he starts talking about philosophers, whether or not all philosophers say this. And then he moves on to talk about, he changes the group to just Christians when he's talking about his own particular version of that. So I and obviously this is opinion, Allahu Alam. I'm going to say that I don't think he's actively trying to be dishonest here. I think he's just confused and hasn't noticed this. So like when you're he doesn't see how there's steps in the arguments, and how you saying that in step 1, which is the, this graph bit that he's this table that he's showing you, by saying that this part is fine because you haven't yet moved on to steps following this, the ones to come, he thinks that conceding here means to concede to the whole thing.
Yeah, but Yusuf, that's kind of like either way, it's really bad because it means because I don't like calling people dishonest either, but unless we have good reason to. Vin is a smart guy, and he understands these arguments when you lay it out to him. He is able to follow your line of reasoning, and so if it isn't dishonesty, which I certainly hope it isn't, then it's ignorance. Because if he thinks
pure incompetence,
then he shouldn't be in this debate. Because with all due respect to Vin, Jake has these discussions with PhDs, people who are specialized in the field, and if you're going to come to a debate with someone who has discussions at that level and who's actually like specialized in the field and who's doing his PhD on topics that are related to this, then I think you should be a bit more equipped than that. So if he thinks that this slide, Jake's concession to this slide, Jake conceding that this isn't a contradiction, has any influence on the fact that the whole formulation of it might or might not be contradictory or relates in any way, shape, or form to Leibniz's law, that's a problem. Because it's only in the next slide where we say, because Jake actually mentioned this to him. He said the being, if you say one being, well, the being can be the Father's being alone, and the persons might not be related to the being. So I have to, this isn't enough. I have to see how you link them in order for us to get.
Yeah, and also, if another example is William Lane Craig's model of the Trinity. Just going to briefly explain it, of how it's not initially contradictory, is that William Lane Craig believes that the one being or the one true God is the Trinity as a whole. So Father, Son, and Spirit together as a whole are the one being of God. And each one of the persons is part of that one being in the same way that a skeleton is part of a cat. So it's not contradictory at that point because there's a part-whole relationship. But then, of course, that has other problems like partialism and the claim that orthodoxy has said that each one of the persons is fully God. How do you explain that on Craig's model? But I'm saying that's an example of which there's one being, three persons in a sense, but the one being is just a collection of the three persons together, and they are parts of that one being. Now, that's not an outright contradiction, but it has other theological problems. And that's why Vin doesn't understand that. He doesn't understand the different ways to conceive of the one being, three persons. And so he doesn't know why I am being cautious and saying, no, not yet, because I want to see what you're going to say. Because if he took Craig's position, I would attack it from this angle of saying, well, it's theologically problematic, even if it's not outright contradictory. So that's the issue, is that I waited to see what was on the next slide of what Vin was going to present. When he presented a form of relative identity Trinitarianism, then, in my opinion, that's when it becomes contradictory because it violates classical identity. But I think we should actually go to the 13 mark, 1330, because before we go to where he says I'm contradicting myself, basically, I'd like to go to 1330 to where he clearly says that he rejects Leibniz's law.
Do you mind? Because I think we should get to that, but we should go to 19 first, just to show.
Okay, you can go back if you want to.
Yeah, and then we'll go to the 19. So we'll just play this bit here where he says,
"Yeah, go to 19:10." Yeah.
So there's no contradiction, is there?
Not.
Is that we're 1 in A and 3 in B? Is that true? Is that what Christians were saying about the Trinity?
Yeah.
So there's no contradiction, is there?
Not yet. No.
Okay. All right. So you're saying not yet, no, and this is specifically because there's countless different ways that this can be interpreted, and so you want to be careful because there's going to be specific responses that you would make depending on how he's going to interpret this now. So it's best philosophically to just wait to see what he says before you start levying, oh, well, you've made a contradiction, because he's not explicitly stated anything contradictory yet. So when it goes to 19 minutes,
what you're talking about. So
was that you then, or was that the video?
No, that was the video. Go ahead. Here's the thing. I'm more than happy if you want to eschew Leibniz's law. I'm more than happy with that.
Well, I'm fine with it because you just conceded that the formulation here is not logically contradictory.
No, I didn't concede. Yeah, you did. Come on, Vin. I mean, 10 minutes ago. You're putting words in my mouth. I never said that.
No, rewatch the video.
I never said that it wasn't a logical contradiction.
Calm down.
So what's Vin referring to here? That's what I want to understand. Is it the being person distinction? If it is, what does it have to do with the problem that arises through Leibniz's law yet, like at this point? Because remember the context, Leibniz's law, right? And then Vin said, yeah, I'm okay with it because you conceded. But then what does the concession have to do with how Leibniz's law ties into the logical problem?
Well, the reason why he's back on this slide, if you check, you'll see he actually goes to the other slide. Then when I address it and say it's a contradiction, he goes back to the previous slide to say, no, Jake, you said it wasn't a contradiction. That's what he did. So
yeah, and he's saying this formulation pointing at the screen. So is he talking about the category distinction? I don't get it.
Yes, but what I'm saying is when I claim that the slide that it appears on the screen now, which was the 4th slide, I believe, when I say that that's contradictory, he goes back to the previous one to say, no, you said this one wasn't, as if that means that the 4th one cannot be contradictory. That's why I'm saying it's dishonesty, because Vin, as you said, I would rather call him dishonest than say that he's that foolish to make such a basic mistake.
Vin is a smart guy. I don't think he's
So there's 325.
So if you go to 1330, when I say he rejected it, that's when the conversation kind of ensued, when I was saying that it was a logical problem. And then we talked about it for a couple minutes, and then he went back to the other slide. He says that if two things are identical, okay, then they must not differ in any way in terms of their properties. And we can go into more examples.
I reject his law.
Okay, so you reject Leibniz's law.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
what we're doing is we're talking about, this is not the Leibniz's law problem of the Trinity. This is a logical contradiction.
Yeah, so if you notice, I asked him if he rejects it. Well, first he said it without me even asking him. He said, I reject that law. I reject his law. And then I said, so you're rejecting Leibniz's law? And he said, mm-hmm. So people need to keep that in mind, because later on, it's going to come up when we get into the discussion, when I'm reading, when I finally got a chance to make my argument about an hour into the video, and I'm reading from William Lane Craig's quote, it's going to come back. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and because there's also an issue here. So he's saying this is the the problem of the logical coherence of the Trinity, not of Leibniz law, blah blah. But the thing is that like this is part of the critique of why it's a logical contradiction. So the fact that he's just kind of like throwing this out of the window is rather convenient, because it seems rather than trying to get into a discussion, because I feel like what should have happened here is like, you reject the law, okay, let's get into a discussion about why you reject the law. But instead of that, as you'll see now, he moves on to this strange sort of like discussion about whether or not it's universally accepted by philosophers, which to me is just superfluous. Like, so what? And then he's sort of moving from the idea of philosophers when he's talking to you and getting you to establish something where all you needed to do was just say Leibniz, because he's like, give me one philosopher who believes it's a universal law. And it's like, Leibniz. That's why it's called Leibniz's law. He was a Christian. He put this forward and he said, you know, that this is the law.
I think he meant that it's not universal, as in there are philosophers who believe it, but then there are those who don't. So that's what he meant. So he knows there's a philosopher. Yeah.
But the problem with that as well is that there's philosophers that don't accept the law.
Yeah, I mean, I get that.
So, and then it's like, well, why have this argument then? Because he's saying that he's accepting the law of non-contradiction and then saying that this doesn't contradict it. So he's fine with this law, even though there's philosophers.
Exactly. That's where the inconsistency is, because if his standard is universal acceptance amongst either everybody or a particular group, i.e., philosophers and logicians, then Vin, which I explained to him, you wouldn't have firm ground based on that principle then to accept law of non-contradiction.
Yeah.
Because there are people who disagree with that.
Yeah, so, and he's changed. You'll see now when we play the video, he changes the what he expects from you to himself. So with you, he's like, you need to show me where philosophers all agree with this universally. But then when he's talking about himself, he changes the limit to just Christians, and then he does the no true Scotsman's fallacy, where if you mention a Christian that doesn't happen to agree with his evaluation of it, they're not proper Christians. And so, oh well, that's convenient. So basically, all you need to do, I can just say, because we could have done the same thing. We could have said, well, if there's a philosopher that doesn't agree with Leibniz's law, he's not a proper philosopher.
Right.
He's it doesn't.
And there's philosophers who don't agree with the Trinity. So I mean, what are we talking about? It's just an irrelevant point, and that I don't know, because Vin made these kind of very poor arguments. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence that sometimes I think it's dishonesty, and at other times I think it's such pure incompetence that he actually thinks what he's saying is a good point. I don't know.
Yeah,
well, this is where I'm saying the nerves at play.
Yeah, I think the more foundational point here is just to try to honestly and accurately represent Vin with regard to what you just said, Yusuf. With regard to Christians and what universal beliefs they have, I think he was referring specifically to Trinitarians. So he's saying you can't be a Trinitarian and not believe a certain thing. It's a universal belief, but
he was switching between the two, though. I mean,
so it was a bad comparison. It was a bad, because he was using
was using that as an analogy to what was actually being spoken of, and it wasn't analogous. That's the point.
It was a bad analogy.
That's why I said it's not universal.
Yeah, the more foundational problem for me here is we're having a discussion, an interfaith discussion about the coherence of the Trinity, the coherence of a particular conception of God. Now, right now, if you're going to come and right from the outset, you're going to say that, oh, well, you know what? I reject this law and that law because it is not accepted universally amongst philosophers. How are we expected to have any kind of meaningful interfaith dialogues in the first place? I can be speaking to a Hindu and like, okay, let's come and talk about the coherence of your worldview, and he can just reject all the laws of logic, or someone who believes in a spaghetti monster or something. And you know what? Since it's not universally accepted, then I can believe in something that is regarded by the majority of human beings and universally accepted by the majority of human beings. I mean, universally accepted in the sense that the laws of logic are universally applicable. I can just reject that and be rationally justified in my belief. I mean, how is that not a case of special pleading? That when you and I just don't find that useful. I mean, if you're gonna have that approach, it's fine as a personal belief. So you have that personal belief. You just want to put that law of logic aside. That's okay for you personally. But if you're gonna come to a forum and you want to intellectually defend your belief, and you have to use some kind of a rational common ground. You have to use certain logical tools and frameworks in order to come to a meaningful discussion. But if you're just gonna reject it and not get into a discussion about whether you're rationally justified in rejecting it and holding to your belief, then how is that conducive to any kind of a meaningful discussion about this? I just don't get it. It's as if whatever you say, Muslims, about Trinitarianism is just meaningless because, you know what, I reject this law, I reject that law, so we don't have any kind of a common ground. We can't have a meaningful discussion at this. But hey, I can ridicule your approach to Trinitarianism as irrational or dishonest. If you can ridicule it, if you can say that the Muslim has an incoherent or irrational approach to deconstructing the Christian conception of God, then on what basis are you doing that? Isn't it reason? So where is the common ground? How can we have the discussion in the first place, Vin? If you're gonna if there's no common ground of logic and reason, I mean, I just don't get how we can get off the ground.
It just ends up being a bit of a superfluous tangent, and he takes it on this sort of red herring, and it's such
I don't
a shame
even think we need to play that part, to be honest. Because
I think we should. I think we should, because it's showcasing what happened in the debate, which is the whole point of this. It's like, we've just been explaining it. Let's show people so they can put two and two together with what we've been saying, and they can see it happening. I think. What do you reckon?
I just don't have a minute mark for that, so I don't know where you're going to
start.
It's
here. It starts happening.
Because what we're doing is we're talking about. This is not the Leibniz's law problem of the Trinity. This is a logical contradiction, right?
Leibniz's law is a feature of classical logic and identity.
Yeah, but it is not a universally believed law.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. When you present,
Jake should comment on this part, because it seems like what Vin is saying is that the logical problem of the Trinity has nothing to do with Leibniz's law. It seems that that's what Vin is trying to say.
There's also the issue of how vague a term this was, and how when he says it, he doesn't say it with the meaning that is the first impression meaning of the word. When you say universal law, you say it's not a universal law. What you assume from that is that it's something that everyone accepts. Yeah. And then there's the other version of whether or not everyone accepts it doesn't matter, but whether or not the people who do accept it consider it a universal law. So there's those two.
I mean, the thing is, he accepts the law of non-contradiction, right? So he's saying that, let's talk about contradictions, but let's not talk about the other one because it's not universally accepted. But why are we talking about law of non-contradiction? It's not universally accepted either by your standards. Universally accepted.
He moves it from that to, rather than talking about universally accepted. In the sense, because he doesn't preface it with universally accepted amongst theists or universally accepted amongst Christians or whatever. He doesn't begin with that. He's just saying it's not universally accepted. And then he moves, when he's talking to you, to say it's not universally accepted among philosophers. And then he says, and not only that,
he's moving it further and further.
Yeah. And so even when he's talking about Leibniz's law, he's talking about a law. And then the example that he gives when he moves on to Christians, he goes, I'll give you an example, and we'll see it now. And he says, all Christians believe that table, that there's one being and three persons. But that's not like a law of logic. That's an idea. And he even makes reference to the fact that it was an idea and not a law. And so that these are two different things within two different groups of people. It's not analogous in any way, and it gets really confusing and bogged down on something really silly. We'll see now.
Want me to read what? I'll read you what Leibniz. Let me just read what Leibniz's law is, and then you can say if you reject it or not. Because I don't know.
Which it's what should have happened, and then the conversation should have gone into, if you don't accept Leibniz's law, let's talk about why. Why not? And then if you can give sufficient reasons to explain why you shouldn't, and to keep a consistent thinking from that to why you're accepting.
But the only reason he gave was that it's because it's not universally accepted. And that's my point. Because that's his only reason, if we actually take that principle, then he shouldn't accept law of non-contradiction or any other logical law.
Yeah, and if that's how it worked, how are we ever going to have a discussion about anything? I mean, just right from the outset, I can say, hey, this particular law, which is the law of non-contradiction that we use to reason like about everything in life, I don't accept that, so the debate is over. It's all good. I mean, that's basically what Vin is doing. So why are we having a discussion? I mean, on what basis?
It's the same problem we had with that first guy on, was it the second podcast when we were talking about the Trinity? He came on and he was like, he just didn't accept anything. Like, you can say anything about God, but then he was like constantly arguing against what we were saying. It's like, well, it's an annoying position to try and have a conversation with, because it's like they get to say whatever they want and it's fine and everything's like unquestionable, but whatever you say is wrong if it happens to go against anything that they've already said. And that's not a discussion at that point. That's just, I already think I'm right and everything I say is going to be right as a default of that. And if you oppose me on anything, then you have to be wrong. But it's like, it's a self-defeating position to hold, because it's holding certain laws within it. But we'll see now. So, was that you or the video again?
I didn't say anything, but what do you want to continue with? You just wanted to play. How far are you going?
It's just a couple of minutes, just to kind of see this play out.
Just give me 2 seconds. When it's your turn to present, right? Then you can show us Leibniz law, and then every philosopher that says that this is a universally agreed upon principle.
So I guess this is important as well.
See, that's what he means by universally agreed upon principle. But honestly, bro, I don't even think we need to go much further with this point, because
I think we need to get through more substance here. We need to go.
We got to go to other stuff.
I just wanted to point out one thing here.
Go ahead.
Because he says, let me find where I noted it. So he was at that point. He's saying that you, when it's your turn to speak, you can do it. Yeah. You can talk about what you want. But there was a point in the video where he actually. What point are we on now? What minute? 14 minutes.
I don't know, but my concern, bro, to be honest with you, is I don't want to beat a dead horse, and there's so many other points that I want to get to. That's the problem.
Yeah, sure. No, it's fine. I'll just kind of say it then. So at the beginning, when he started his presentation, you stopped him for a minute and said, "Hold on, do you mind? What is this? Are you going to do this, and then I'll have my turn to speak at the end, or do you want it to be a conversation?" He's like, "No, it's cool, man. Let's talk." And he's like, he was saying that it was okay to be a conversation. But then when it starts getting into the meat and potatoes, he's like, no, you got to wait till your turn. And I think you even start to mention at some point as well, it's like, well, it doesn't seem like you actually want me to talk about the contradiction. You're just closing all the doors that lead to that conversation.
One last quick point. Look at the the criteria he's putting for how you can successfully critique his position. He's saying, I'm going to finish. And then later on, you can move to your point where you're going to show me how Leibniz's law is a universally accepted law among philosophers. Imagine any discussion worked like that. That, you know what, you can critique my position, but first, show me how the laws of logic that you're going to use to critique my position are universally accepted amongst all philosophers. I mean, no discussion would get off the ground. No discussion would get off the ground. This is not a serious discussion. He didn't come here to have a real discussion.
And we could turn it on him and say the same thing. It's like, all right, well, no, we're not even going to bother letting you even give your presentation until you can show us that there's a position, that the position you're putting forward is universally accepted among the philosophers. And we could even go even further and say among the Christians. And I've got some interesting documents to share as well when we sort of get into that. But this is more in response to what he starts to say towards the end. I think 23-minute mark, and he says, as a Christian, I don't have the problem that many of you Muslims have. I have the Bible, and all I need to do is sit and read it. And
he says that a lot. He says that a lot, like in the middle of a discussion that has nothing to do with the discussion. But you know what? Let me score a point.
But it's funny because there's documentation by the Christians themselves that completely refutes this nonsense. But we'll get to that when we get to it.
Yeah, irrelevant. Yeah.
What do you want to go to next?
I want to jump to 2440, where
2440.
Yeah.
So, do you mind because the bit that I was just mentioning there is at 23:15. So I could quickly go through.
You can stop there. Start there.
Yeah. 23.
Scripture. For God himself says by Isaiah the prophet, yes, it behooves, say it I too. For the tokens of truth are more exact as drawn from Scripture than from other sources, end quote. The reason that is important is because as a Christian, I do not have, and God is witness, I do not have the problem that many of my Muslim friends do, because the Quran is insufficient to give you a complete theology. You need ahadith, you need ulama, etc., etc. A Christian can take his Bible, sit down, and do theology. He doesn't need a scholar, and he doesn't need a council to define for him the nature of God. Now,
well, this is the most wrong statement that he could have ever made, because this is a problem.
Yeah, but let's not. Sorry, Yusuf, but I just as my opinion, let's not respond to it, because again, it's irrelevant. But then imagine we were having a discussion about scripture. Right? Imagine we're having a discussion with Vin about textual criticism or something, and then in the middle of the discussion, I'm like, I don't have a problem that my Christian friends have with their Trinity because I worship one God. But how does that relate to a discussion about textual criticism and scripture? I mean, I just don't get it. You're just trying to score a cheap point, really.
No, that's right. That's right.
He knows Jake is not going to go into a discussion about that. But just for the audience, guys, I want to know that Muslims have this problem, even though we don't have the time to go into it. But just trust me, it's a problem. It's a very bad approach, very bad tactic.
I know what you mean, but I still think we can, because like I say, there's two documents here that we can reference, because it's relevant because he's mentioned it. So it's relevant in terms of us critiquing it. It's not relevant to the debate that they're having in any way. This is a non sequitur. Not a non sequitur. It's a red herring again, which he's firing these out one after the other.
He's got so many of those, but that's the thing is if we start to address all of these kind of points, we're not going to get anywhere. I mean,
well, if you don't mind, I'll go through this one quickly. It's basically just a document. So
let's go through this one quickly. Then later on, just focus on the substance of the Trinity.
Okay.
Because that's what I want to do mainly with this, because I want to point out Vin only made like a couple relevant points, and then I want to show what my response to those were and how Vin never really responded. I think that those are the main things I want to get to, because I think that might have slipped by a lot of people.
Yeah, I guess why I want to mention this now as well is especially after Abdulrahman he says this a lot. And if there are Christians that really do think that this is a great point, it couldn't be any more false. So could you share my screen again?
I've had to it went away?
No, it's because I've had to use a different tab. So I
go
had
ahead.
to stop sharing that one so I could share this one. So this is an article. This is Christians, what do you believe? Probably a heresy about Jesus, says survey. So they basically went around asking a bunch of Christians what they believe, and most of them hold heretical beliefs. And so this opinion, all you need is the Bible. You don't need no scholars. You don't need no one else. Like anyone can just sit there, read the Bible, and come to the exact same understanding as every other Christian. It couldn't be any more wrong. A majority of US adults, 59%, say that the Holy Spirit is a force, not a personal being. They also said that Jesus was the first and greatest created by God the Father. And then there are results that show a pressing need for Christians to be taught Christology, especially as the outcome has gotten worse since 2016. There is a general lack of teaching today on the person of Christ. And here it says, although blah, 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 all these beliefs are contrary to the historic Christian faith, citing Romans, blah, 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 blah. For example, while an overwhelming 97% of evangelicals do believe that there is one true God in three persons, 3 out of 4 of them attempt to give Jesus first place honors, even though that belief has been rejected by the church down through the centuries. So 3/4 of the Christians, and here I think it's even the evangelicals specifically. So like 75% of evangelicals put Jesus at the top of that hierarchy, even though the Bible even clearly states the opposite, that it's the none is greater than the Father. But it's the idea that like the Christians don't need some sort of guidance or help. The Bible's a big book.
Yeah.
It's difficult to read all of it. It's very dry. And they if they come up to certain opinions, they need a teacher there to help them through these problems. They need the ulama. They need their own versions of that. It's really So can you share the 1 second? I'll bring up that video again. There you go. And where do you want to play it from here or from somewhere else?
2440 is good. Because Vin makes a point here. He makes another huge error when it comes to Leibniz's law. He doesn't understand what it is. So I want you to play it.
Oh yeah, that was huge. That was the highlight for me.
On your presentation, because I want to understand what your position actually is. So I mentioned Leibniz's law before. I'll read a formulation of what it is. Formulation of Leibniz's law is that X and Y are identical if and only if any predicate or property P possessed by X is also possessed by Y and vice versa. Do you agree with this or not?
Well, if you're talking about property as in the brute ontology, then fine. But if you're trying to have that bleed over into persons, then obviously I disagree with that. So it depends on how you're defining property.
Persons have properties, don't they? Okay, pause the video.
Properties.
So Vin, when I ask him if he agrees with Leibniz's law, he says, well, it depends. If you're talking about the brute ontology of the being, then yes. But if you're talking about the persons, then no. So he doesn't even understand what Leibniz's law is, because to make a distinction and say, well, one is applicable to one and not the other, he doesn't know what it means. I mean, I can't see any way out of, giving him an excuse other than to say that he simply doesn't understand what the law of identity is or what Leibniz's law is, even after I just explained it to him what it is. It's something that is universal, that applies to any being whatsoever, any category, any property. Now, when we're comparing two things and he says, well, it only applies to being but not persons, it shows that he doesn't understand what the point of Leibniz's law is, because it's meant to also apply to persons and any other two things that are being compared. So, I mean, to me, Vin, the main problem in talking about the substance of it is he doesn't understand what a logical law is. He doesn't understand what Leibniz's law is. And he didn't even understand my argument, which eventually, hopefully, we'll get to later on, of what exactly that is. If you scroll forward, unless you guys have another comment on that.
No, I mean, to me, this is just, embarrassing. I just don't know. I mean, why would you come into this debate not knowing what the law of identity is and how identity works? Because that's what it's all about, man. I mean...
Well, this is the thing. Maybe he thinks he does, and so you can't know what you don't know. And so this kind of gap in his knowledge there, I guess, is just.
And then he repeats the same thing like 2 minutes later. Some of these points, because I want to get to a lot of them. Some of them, I guess, I'm just going to have to read and say what my point is, and people can watch it because we're not going to be able to play everything. But 2 minutes later, he basically repeats the same remark about Leibniz's law. He says that basically it's a flawed analogy because I'm comparing humans to God, when it has nothing to do with that. It's whether or not you actually believe in the law of Vin and you think that it's applicable or not. And then he says that he doesn't accept it because I haven't proven that it's universally accepted by philosophers. Well, going back to the same point, the law of non-contradiction is not universally accepted by philosophers. So if that's your criteria, Vin, you are being inconsistent. And I can't believe that he actually thinks it's a good argument. If he does, then he was just not ready for this discussion.
I think this is probably key here as well. So this is the literally the linchpin to the whole debate. If he wants to reject Leibniz's law of identity, he has to give a better reason than the one he's given. And, obviously he can go away, do some reading and try and find a better reason. Or just, even if he just goes into it and look into it like with an open mind, trying to discover what that means and whether or not he should actually accept it. And he has to realize that his position for rejecting that necessitates that he also rejects the law of non-contradiction, which means that we shouldn't. There's no point even having this discussion because it's just negating logic altogether.
Yeah, unless he retracts that reason and then gives a better reason, a different reason for why he's rejecting Leibniz's law. But as far as I could tell, that was his main thing. He's like, prove that it's universally accepted by philosophers.
Like you mentioned this to him. You mentioned this to him, Jake, that Peter Van Inwagen actually defends it, right? I mean, why would the guy go through the trouble of defending it if you could just, say it's not universally accepted, and what's it called? And he defends relative identity Trinitarianism, right? Which is related. So I think the problem is, I mean, I know you're going to go through this, but the problem is that's really where the debate ended. I mean, if you think of what points he made the being category distinction. When he moved to the next slide, that's where the crux of the issue is. Oh, I reject the law of identity. Debate over. I win. And then he was really loud for the rest of the debate. I'm not sure what else he said of substance, but that's it. That's where he doesn't want to move from there. That's the point. He doesn't want to discuss. He just thinks it's sufficient for him to very assertively say that, my rejection of Leibniz's law is sufficient to put this debate to rest. I just don't see how.
Yeah, and I'm just going to continually demonstrate, hopefully, that Vin doesn't understand what a necessary logical law is versus a contingent fact. He doesn't understand. He doesn't understand what the difference is. So I want to go to and there were guys. We're just giving you a little taste of it. I have so many notes, and people can contact me if they want them. There's like 5 examples of this, of where he tries to draw an analogy between rejecting Leibniz's law and God being unique, and he says that they're the same thing. He doesn't understand the difference between a necessary logical law and a contingent fact. And one example is at the 30-minute, 10-second mark, if you want to go there. There was another one before that, but I think this one is clearer for people to see. Where he asked me about creation. And so you can play that 30-10. It's around there. It's not a logical law.
Well, I can create a logical formulation, right? I could say premise A, everything that exists has been created. Premise B, since God exists, he must be created.
That's not.
Yeah, this
so Vin thinks that he created a necessary logical law by saying.
So
I mean, it's just. Can
I just say something? So listen. So everything that exists is created. God exists, therefore God is created. That's valid, but premise.
It's not a logical law.
It being valid doesn't make premise 1 a logical law. Vin seems to be making several errors here. First of all, he seems to think that a logical syllogism is synonymous with a logical law. The second thing is he seems to think that a contingent property is synonymous with a law of logic, a necessary law of logic. It seems to. I mean, this is, to be honest, it's
super cringe, man. Because the way he said it as well, he was so confident. He said, but the thing is, he even said, "Well, I can make a logical." What did he say? Logical formula. Let me play that again.
Right?
It's not a logical.
A unique exception to that law.
It's not a logical law.
Well, I can create a logical formulation, right?
I can create a logical formulation off that. So just because you can put forward a formulation that is logically coherent or valid, obviously it's not sound, but just because you've made a valid argument, you've not then demonstrated that you've created, like you said there, like a necessary logical law in any way.
And I think I get what he means by law here. Like, you can have a law of nature, for example, but it seems he doesn't understand that the laws of nature are contingent. It seems like
that's another example he gave. I skipped that one where he actually said the example he gave was the law of thermodynamics, and he said, "Well, that doesn't apply to God," or something like that. Like,
he
doesn't understand because again, and I'll just, without playing the video, Vin, look up any law of thermodynamics. It's actually a contingent law because it says if the system is isolated, then such and such. So even the expression of the law is a contingent law that is based on whether or not the system is isolated or open. So I mean,
keeping in mind that you don't even need that formulation to know it's contingent. I mean, even if the law is, in all of space-time, a certain property occurs, that doesn't make it a necessary law of logic. It's just the way the physical reality works, right? So these physical laws are not regarded as on the same.
And how could it be necessary? How could it even be necessary on classical theism, which Vin brought up? Because under classical theism, God could have existed alone by himself without any of these supposed laws of physics. God didn't have to create. Now, if Vin says that it's some kind of necessary law, well, then that means God didn't have free will to choose to create or not. I mean, it just results in an absurdity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know what he was trying to achieve with that.
No, the reality of Yusuf is, I think he genuinely at this point, I don't think he's being dishonest. I think he genuinely doesn't even understand the difference between a contingent fact and a logical necessary law, which is really
there was
bad.
The part I don't know if it's still coming or if you played it. There's the omnipresence part, which is
I skipped that one. If you want to go to it, I have the time.
I mean, you could just comment on it very quickly because it's again, it's not.
Yeah, I mean,
really,
he uses the same one. I think it was around the 27th minute mark. And instead of answering my question about Leibniz's law, he says that it's analogous to God's omnipresence somehow. And that I'm rejecting the application of the law. He says, I'm referring to himself. He's rejecting the application of the law when it comes to the Almighty. He uses omnipresence and the law of thermodynamics as an example that because they don't apply to God or something like that, that it's not a law because it isn't universally accepted. I mean, it's just absurd. I mean, if you think that omnipresence or the law of thermodynamics is analogous to the question of whether or not logical necessary laws like non-contradiction, identity, and excluded middle apply to God, I mean, you just don't understand what a logical law actually is. He
might mean what he might mean like he puts these different locations on the map, right? He might mean that, like, if I say that I'm both here and not here at the same time in the same way, that's a contradiction. That's not what omnipresence is. Nobody's saying that. Yeah, exactly.
And it's funny as well because you can see here with this example he gave in his presentation, he's got 3 points. It was such like a conveniently chosen number as well, like 3. And the thing is, omnipresence means like that there's a presence everywhere, and so if there's a presence everywhere,
it couldn't be and not be.
And so there's not a gap in his presence, which this example is giving. So it's not. It was just such a weird, like, convenient example to sort of like play towards his whole Trinity thing. It was a bit weird.
I mean, there's so many other points of which he kind of repeats the same mistake about, because it's not a universally accepted law, therefore he's going to reject it. I mean, that same point over and over again is like a drum beat. But there was another point, scrolling a lot further down in the debate, around the 45-minute mark, 45 minutes and 28 seconds, where he claims that I surrendered the debate.
I don't believe in the doctrine of omnipresence. That's a separate discussion.
I do, but there's...
Okay.
I don't understand it the way you do.
I know how you understand it, but here's what I'm saying.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Can you please pause? I mean, why that approach, Vin? Like, why are you trying to score points like that? Why couldn't he just ask, okay, let's talk about omnipresence and how it relates to this? But what if you don't believe in the law in omnipresence? That's a separate discussion. He's trying to trap you. He's trying to hold you like verbally hostage, right? So he can score a point. That's not conducive to any fruitful discussion, and I don't think you can have a reasonable discussion, honestly. At least not a debate. I've had good discussions with Vin in private, but at least not a debate because you literally, I can't deconstruct his points as we are now in a discussion because he's not going to let you. But you did very well, Jake. I don't know how you did, to be honest, but you kind of did that during the debate. I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, I think as well. We mentioned this in that after discussion as well once the debate had finished. If you were going to have a discussion with him again in the future, although I don't think it'd be fruitful or pointful, have a point at all. The only people that there'd be a benefit for are maybe his followers. Is if you had a timed debate where
it can't be an open discussion.
No, it's impossible. He has a certain amount of time to say what he's going to say, and then you've got a certain amount of time to say what you're going to say. There's no interrupting. The person's removed from the screen so that there isn't even an opportunity for him to throw off the conversation. You know, like if you were to take me off now, I couldn't say anything to, get in the way of that. I couldn't do anything on the screen to sort of distract anyone. Like he needs to be out of the way whenever you have to say
you can't have a conversation with him. He's got to be timed. You're exactly right. But the main point is coming up that I was referring to when you play it now is what I was talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I see a person say you believe in three gods because you believe God is fully present in Texas, Nebraska, and New York, I say no, you're wrong. Your human logic is flawed, and you have to subordinate your mind to Scripture. Now,
can I say something on that as well? That's not even logic, because there's not just Nebraska and Texas and Pennsylvania. There's there's every other place. So it gets to a point where it's like, well, if you're saying God is omnipresent, then you're saying that there's a presence in every point in space.
Yeah, then there's like an infinite number. In his analogy, there would be an infinite number of persons. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, the application.
Yeah.
Again, please, if you're in the audience, please watch the beginning of this show. I went down and we talked about what an actual formal logical contradiction actually was. We all agreed. And then we talked about column A and column B. Is there a contradiction? He said no. Column A had being as one for Allah, and column B had persons as three. So, I mean, that's pretty much that's when you surrendered the entire discussion, Jay.
So crazy.
See, so this is what I'm saying, Abdul. This is why I'm telling you, if you watch going back, he thinks that just because that I said that one being three persons isn't immediately contradictory yet until you explain the relationship between them. He thinks at that point alone that I've conceded the debate. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, Vin, you better go and tell all your Christian friends, the ones that are actually writing on the subject, the PhDs, the theologians and philosophers writing on the logical problem of the Trinity, because they're writing hundreds of pages on it. So if it was just about saying, oh, there's a distinction between being and person and there's no contradiction, we could all pack up and go home. I mean, it's just a silly, it's a silly point. I mean, honestly,
but that means, Jake, that's a slide he was referring to earlier.
That's why I told you that, man. That's what I'm telling you.
Yeah, but I just don't get it.
Because he thinks all he needed to do was to get me to say that there's a distinction between being in person and saying there's one being three persons isn't immediately contradictory without explaining the relationship between them, that therefore I've lost the discussion or the debate. But as I explained with William Lane Craig earlier, Craig says the one being is the Trinity and the three persons are parts of the Trinity. Well, that's not really a contradiction, because just like me, I have one body, I have one flesh body, and I have more than three parts, but I can name three. I have two arms and a head. Now, if I say that there's one being, which is the whole body, and there's three parts, 2 arms and a head, is that contradictory? No, because they're parts of the one being. But the contradiction comes when Vin says that the parts are identical to the whole, and they're also not identical to each other. That's where the contradiction.
By the way, this is also related to the part where he talked about the Quran and the eternality of God's word.
Yeah.
He thinks that that's somehow analogous, and that somehow leads to some kind of a logical incoherence, because he thinks that's all you need to say. Because the fact that he thinks that the being person distinction is sufficient to put the debate, to rest, means that I understand on that basis how he thinks that the idea that God's word is eternal can result in the same kind of incoherence. And when you responded and said it's not a person, he thinks it's not related. He said, I didn't say it's a person. He doesn't understand how it is in no way, shape, or form analogous to the logical problem of the Trinity, because he doesn't understand the logical problem of the Trinity. He thinks that slide of the category distinctions is where it ends. But
he thinks I surrendered. He thinks I surrendered the debate there. And that's the thing, is that I'm struggling here, because I'm struggling between dishonesty or whether or not he believes it, and he's so incompetent. I don't know, but either way, it's just a huge problem.
Yeah.
So
I think he believes it.
Yeah, Yusuf, I don't know if you want to comment before we go on to the next one, the next clip.
I'm honestly looking at it. I can't move away from this position that I think he really believes what he's saying. I think,
even the silly stuff like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he believes it. Like, let's just watch. Just look.
Yeah,
at his face.
we'll give another. Yeah, when you're done with that, we'll give another example at the 47-minute mark and 30 seconds, where again he compares accepting worship to a logical law. Another time demonstrated he doesn't know what a logical law is.
Yeah, anyways. So
being as one for Allah, and Allah actually was
like he's looking frustrated. Like I'm just not getting the impression that when he's saying he thinks he's lying, or he knows he's lying. Like I'm just getting this idea that he's frustrated. He thinks his belief is clear, succinct, and obviously true, and he's getting frustrated that you're not just conceding now and just like handing like a trophy over to him and like and taking your Christian Shahada and all of that. Like,
and we talked about what an actual formal logical contradiction actually was. We all agreed. And then we talked about column A and column B. Is there a contradiction? He said no. Column A had being as one for Allah, and column B had persons as three. So, I mean, that's pretty much that's when you surrendered the entire discussion, Jay.
I didn't surrender anything. So let's get back to
I'm just not getting that impression. And the thing is as well, like, if that was where you surrendered the entire discussion, I guess this may be a point in your favor, Jake. It's Abdulrahman dying there. But I guess this is a point in your favor. If he really did believe that, why did he continue with the discussion? Why didn't he just go, I've won then?
Or Yusuf, why did he wait until 20, 30 minutes later to say, exactly. He should have just said it then and said, all right, have a good night. I mean,
yeah, like, because I guess that would be a point in your favor, I guess, unless he was, because of his nerves, and then just working towards my favor again. Because of his nerves, he just like got a bit confused and overlooked.
Well, this is a good question, Yusuf, and nobody's going to know the answer to this. But if Vin is watching this, or if he's going to watch it afterwards, do you think after him watching this and pointing these things out that he'll still make the same claims? And if he does at that point, then I think it's got to be dishonesty or some kind of cognitive problem. I don't know. I mean,
for me, I think it's enough. So, and I know this because I've got the same problem sometimes. Like I'll say something, and half of the time, because of the person that you're saying it to, you get a bit sort of caught up in the thing. What I think would be necessary for him, inshallah, he's watching this.
Yeah.
And inshallah, what I think he needs to do is just, and this doesn't require him to become Muslim. So this is the point here. This doesn't mean, if he just admits that he made these mistakes, that, oh no, now he's a Muslim. Because there's a distinction between arguing for something badly and the thing that the conclusion itself, whether or not that is true or false. A bad argument for a true conclusion doesn't make that true conclusion false. So even if he's right, even if Christianity is true, and even if the Trinity is actually coherent or blah, 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 all of that could still be possible. And he could still recognize that he made these huge errors throughout this conversation.
Thank you for making that point, Yusuf, because I wanted to say something similar. Like, Jake normally has this approach with Christians, and I've seen him explicitly tell some of our Christian friends that, it's not like once you concede that there is an apparent logical problem and we get into a discussion about it, that Christianity is false, or even if you say that there's no solution, that doesn't mean you need to leave Christianity. I mean, it might to some, but that's not the point of the discussion. The point is, let's look at the apparent logical problem of the Trinity, which Christian philosophers and theologians recognize, and let's discuss it together. Let's try to solve it. But as Jake put it through the debate, Christian theologians and philosophers are saying that there is a problem, here's a solution, but Vin is saying, looking at the board and saying there isn't even a problem up there. And that's what a lot of people do. And I think part of that might be a bit of a defense mechanism, but we're not trying to say that because there's a problem that you need to leave Christianity or something. What we're saying is that let's have a discussion about it. Of course, we'd like for you to become Muslims. That's not the point. The point is that the fact that there is a discussion going on back and forth, and that we see a problem with your conception of God, you see a problem with our conception of God, doesn't mean that, right after the discussion's over, if we don't find a solution, that's it, Yep. So I think that kind of sparks a defense mechanism, this idea that, if this argument succeeds, I'm done.
Yeah. He needs to have a little quiet moment in a room by himself in the middle of the night and have a little moment between him and God where he reflects on basically the things that we've been sort of pointing out here, and whether or not his nervousness, because he's going to be fully aware of, if he was nervous in that, and how jittery he came across, and how, to what degree his ego was playing a part on. And he needs to reflect on this, because I think it's his ego that's sort of getting in the way of him sort of acknowledging his mistakes, and, the confusion that's sort of arising out of this dialogue as a result of that. So I guess we don't even have to refer to it necessarily as deceit, or if we are going to call it deceit, I'd say he's deceiving himself. Like he's, so
I like that approach.
Yeah. If you go to 4730, I have is the next clip where again he makes an error about what a logical law is. Can play it. Yep.
Okay. I'm going to make a statement. You tell me if it's true or false. It is always wrong to accept worship from people.
As a human?
I just made a naked statement. Are you saying that it's wrong? Wait, Jake,
information.
Jake, are you saying it's wrong for everybody in the created order, but right for your God? That's special pleading.
It's not a logic. So I went to respond. And so what people don't see is, and Abdul, as you're saying, not to big up myself, but the exact same points that I'm making now, I was making at the time it happened in the debate when he said that, and I said, Vin, it's not a logical law, and I was getting frustrated at that point because I felt like, and especially when he's smiling like that, it seems like either he's so.
It's not just the smile; it's like leaning into the camera.
Yeah. That's looking for like approval.
Just play that again.
And it's wrong.
Not enough information.
Jake, are you saying it's wrong for everybody in the created order, but right for your God? That's special pleading.
It's not,
Jake, I think not enough information was a good answer there, but I think you should have just said no. I mean, because no, it is not always. If he's making an absolute statement, and it isn't,
but his explanation
not enough
is assuming it.
Yeah, not enough information is the right answer. But I don't. Let's just move on.
He doesn't know what a logical law is. That's the problem.
Yeah,
because every analogy he gives is absolutely flawed.
Yeah,
and just this idea, because the thing is as well, like you can see he's trying to bait you into this when he's like, he's giving something that's super vague, and the rational response to that is, this is too vague. You need to be a bit more specific with that. What do you mean?
That's why Jake's cautious approach to his answers, like it's not enough information. So why don't you try to respond to Jake and like give him more information?
Yeah, and it doesn't follow from that it's special pleading either, because within the whole concept is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a distinct being with unique features, and that there's sufficient reason to hold Allah as being this kind of unique being that holds these particular features.
Of course, it's not special pleading, but I think the issue is, you see, if the answer to that question was yes, like if the answer to the question was yes. What was the question again?
It
is always wrong to what?
Okay. To accept worship. Accept worship. And you notice I already anticipated what he was trying to get at. That's why I said, I paused and I said, if you're a human, because I knew what he was saying. It was just silly.
Yeah. If, for the sake of argument, the answer to that question was yes, it is always wrong to accept worship from humans, then that would be, if that is an absolute law, then us saying that God accepts worship from people is a problem. And that's kind of the point. So since the laws of logic are absolute and are universal and are applicable in all possible worlds, that's why it's a problem. So if the answer to your question was yes, it is always wrong for the sake of argument, and we said that God accepts worship from people, then that would be a logical problem, and that's kind of the whole point. But it isn't always wrong for to accept worship from humans, because God can accept worship from humans.
Yeah, I mean, logical necessary laws apply to all possible worlds. I mean, there's a possible world in which God exists alone by himself. Therefore, this idea of worship is just not analogous to what we're talking about. And Vin doesn't understand that.
Yep.
MashaAllah, brother Khalil, with his thinking face on. That's a philosopher's pose if I've ever seen one.
Yeah.
MashaAllah.
So, where were we at here? So, I mean, Vin also, he did a couple straw mans. There was a point where he said that I claimed that there was no explicit statement about the Trinity in the Bible. And then he went to Matthew 28, when actually what I said was, because he started questioning about the Quran. He started asking me, hey, Jake, can you show me in the Quran where it says all the laws of logic apply to God? And I'm like, really, Vin? No, of course not. I mean, after we skipped around about it for a while. And then I said, well, Vin, if that's what you're looking for, it would be like me saying, can you show me in the Bible explicitly where it says God is a Trinity? And I said it exactly like that. He responded and brought me to Matthew 28. And then when he concluded with his explanation of it, he said, Jake said that I can find nowhere in the Bible an explicit statement about the Trinity.
Yeah,
so
he changed it from
he changed it. Yeah, he changed it from me being very specific and anal as he was being, and saying, well, Vin, this is absurd to expect that, to him changing it to something else and attacking a straw man. That's exactly what he did.
And then claiming the victory at the end of it.
And Jake explicitly says, I mean, in other places, I don't know if Vin would know this, that I mean, he's not one of these Muslims who says you can't derive, like, at least the divinity of Jesus. I don't know if he says about the Trinity, but I think his position is that you can derive these things, or you can get it from the Bible. But it's just frustrating that he kept going on. So at least let Jake explain. Like, this is a problem. Like, Vin, let Jake explain what he meant by that and accept his explanation. The most frustrating part in the entire debate for me wasn't this. It was when you said that you don't know where Vin got his formulation.
Oh, yeah.
And then he completely blew that out of Jake simply meant that he doesn't know, as in he's not sure where he got it from, whether he got it from Athanasius or someone else, or he thought it up himself. And then Jake, it's just like he wants to capitalize on anything he can capitalize on. And he kept going on. And you were trying to clarify in the middle. You actually told him, is it possible that you got it from, was it Van Inwagen or someone you said? Someone else. You mentioned someone's name. Is it possible? He didn't answer. But that question itself that you asked him should clarify what you meant, that you just didn't know where he got it from. You're not saying that it's nonsense. Obviously, you know it's not nonsense because you know this formulation. It's a standard formulation.
And keep in mind that his criticism of Islam and the Quran, of saying he doesn't need to go to sources outside of the Bible, then if I kept that in mind, I would assume, well, then, Vin, your obvious answer would be the Bible, but you went to Athanasius and the Athanasian Creed.
Which is really funny as well.
Good point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I were to assume, I would say, well, Vin probably just got it from the Bible. But you're saying you got it from the Athanasian Creed. You're also saying that Christians just basically believed this from the beginning. And if that's the case, then there's many different Christian scholars where you could have read this and it could have piqued your interest and you understood it. So I mean, but true. Vin said this because he did anything, and this is why I'm saying it's a dishonest tactic. He did these type of things to go on these 2, 3, 4 minute excursions to evade talking about the actual substance of the debate at all costs.
Obvious. That was obvious, but that's a good point, by the way, because, I mean, if the Bible is sufficient, then why are you referring to Athanasius or anyone else? Why are you actually providing us with this formulation, which is not explicitly from the Bible, that which is a later formalization of the Trinity, if it isn't? I think that's a good point. Although, again, it's not relevant to the topic of the debate.
It's really funny. I used to be on this forum, and I think the whole forum was just about philosophy, and there was this one Christian who would his whole being on this forum was just to sort of like proselytize to people, and he would constantly come on and then get banned because obviously it's not allowed on philosophy forums to just proselytize. The whole point is you're supposed to kind of engage in a discussion, and that wasn't his style. And he would message you. And the way he would speak to you, it was like, what was that example in philosophy where you've got like a guy on the other side and it's like a robot sort of action. Someone says something to you and they just give you, and he'd never speak for himself. He would only ever talk through the Bible. So like if you ever asked him a question, he'd be like, the Bible says, and then he'd give like a quote, and that was everything. No matter what it was you would talk to him about, he had something, and he would just let the Bible constantly speak for him. So it's like, obviously you can do that's very difficult, but he wasn't doing that. He was referring to other things. It's obviously really funny considering he was saying
considering what he said. Yeah.
So where do you want to go next from here?
I want to go to the point where I actually finally got to give my argument, which was 58:45. I asked Vin if he knew what relative identity Trinitarianism was, which is the position he was defending. He admitted he didn't know what it was, and then I went on for like a 4-minute explanation of what it actually was and how it relates to the topic. And I think for me personally, like this part and the next 20 minutes was actually where the debate was, and Vin totally imploded. And that's why he said that he had to leave.
Yeah, so, but I guess this is as well more evidence that he was just sort of ignorant of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because he had no idea.
So, but then this goes against this whole deceptive thing, or trying to deceive the viewers in the sense that I think
I think it was at some points deception. Like in the case of when we were talking, the example we just gave about the him saying, well, where does it say in the Quran logic applies to God? And this sort of very literal, anachronistic way, that I think those type of things were deceptive, and that he did them purposefully because he did it several times throughout the discussion. And he would say, oh, Jake said this, and then Jake never said that. So
when he almost said that, he said it as if there was like something explicit in the Bible about the logic.
Exactly. Yeah, which is not. But yeah, so in this part, to me, it was a big eye opener, where when he didn't even know what relative identity Trinitarianism was or is, and when I went on to give my explanation, when he finally let me talk for like 4 minutes, he had no good answer to it. And this is the part where it's really embarrassing. This is the most embarrassing part, where he tried to say that William Lane Craig was not critiquing the model that he represented because he didn't even understand what Craig was saying, and he doesn't even understand his own position. But let's get to that because that's really important. So
yeah, I think he's oversimplified the whole thing, and he's sort of just come in assuming that it's literally hinges on that beginning bit, and so I don't think he's really gone and done much further reading beyond that on this particular issue because he didn't feel like it needed to.
Exactly.
And then obviously these problems start to sort of transpire. Should I press play?
Yeah.
Figure it out. If you get stuck, you're not going to answer the question. Let's go. Come on.
I get stuck and I'm not going to answer the question.
You did it with Matthew 28.
Where does the
absolute irony of that comment?
Quran talk about logic? I mean, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
The Bible does though. The Bible does.
It's ridiculous. Okay, so I'll get back. I'll get back to trying to address your presentation. So your presentation, Vin. Let me ask you a question. Do you know what relative identity Trinitarianism is?
I'm probably familiar with the concept. Go ahead, explicate it for me.
So do you know what it is, or you don't know what it is?
I'm not familiar with that specific terminology, but go ahead, explain it to me.
Okay, so you're not
couldn't just say no. I mean,
so relative identity Trinitarianism is basically what you presented.
He even had to like throw in a few big words that explicate it for me. Like tell me, just like, you could have just said no. I don't. What is it?
In the same 7 premises that you presented it, people can look it up for themselves. How I originally expressed the LPT, or the logic problem of the Trinity, what Vin has done, and I don't know, I guess it's based on his own thoughts, he has reformulated in such a way to understand that one is referring to being, the others are referring to person. They're the same being, but they're not the same person. This is something that is explained by people like Peter Van Inwagen in the text, Philosophical and Theological Essays on the Trinity, that's published by Oxford. So people can go and look at that.
Pause.
The reason that I bring it up,
because the part where Vin went on that like 10-minute spiel about Jake saying he didn't know where he got the presentation from was related to what Jake just said. But Jake said, I don't know where he got it from. He said it in a very normal way. He didn't say it in a way that Vin doesn't know what he's talking about. And then he affirmed that other people say it. Yeah. So clearly he's not saying it's nonsense. Just please rewind a few seconds and let him say it again.
Yeah, I don't think that Vin just made it up.
Yeah.
Not the same person. This is something that is explained by people like Peter Van Inwagen.
A bit.
He has reformed.
Okay.
Trinitarianism is basically what you presented. In the same 7 premises that you presented it, people can look it up for themselves. How I originally expressed the LPT, or the logical problem of the Trinity, what Vin has done, and I don't know, I guess it's based on his own thoughts, he has reformulated in such a way to understand that one is referring to being, the others are referring to person. They're the same being, but they're not the same person. This is something that is explained by people like Peter Van.
He's not listening. So Vin, right now, he starts moving. So he's trying to go to get a reference to defend himself against what he thinks is an accusation. And then he's not listening to the rest of the part where you say that it's referenced by Van Inwagen. So clearly you don't think that it's like a made-up formulation. But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, and you could see like
he went straight to his computer to get the reference, right?
Right. He was looking frustrated, and then when you mentioned that, his eyebrows went up like he got offended.
Yeah.
If you look, But like his eyebrows were down. He doesn't look
Trinity.
He doesn't look that in it. And then
what Vin has done, and I don't know, I guess it's based on his own thoughts. He has
it's funny as well because his eyebrows raised even before you said like it's based on his own thoughts. Like look at the moment that his eyebrows raised.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said I don't know, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, so that this went off on a whole tangent as well. I mean, this point took us on that was the most frustrating part of the debate for me.
Yeah, and if you can, I think you might want to skip forward because I go through the explanation and people can go back and watch it, and maybe I'll do a little bit here. But it was about 4 minutes long. But after my entire explanation, I want you to see what Vin's response to it is. So it's at an hour, 4 minutes, and 30 seconds. Vin starts to respond.
Hour 40, 4 minutes or hour and 40?
4 and then 30 seconds. Yeah.
30.
Yeah.
Wondering if you can step up to the plate and if you have any example of that.
Well, a couple things. The adjective spurious was used, and the phrase "no utility outside of Christianity" was used in those quotes. Please read back where William Lane Craig said it was a contradiction of logic. Just
okay,
read that
I'll read it. I'll read it for you again.
Now, wait, Jake. Now, Jake, big bro, you got to admit, I let you go for a while, right?
Yeah, you told me to read it again.
I asked you a very specific question. Now, I asked you something very specific a bunch of times, and you generalized it. So please slow down and listen very closely. I'm going to repeat the questions again.
Yeah.
The adjective spurious was used, and the term does not have utility outside of Christianity was used, right?
Yeah, there were others.
Here's what I want. Show me where WLC, all you need to read is where he says, and it is logically contradictory. That's all you need to read us.
He says logical incoherence.
Okay. Show me logically contradictory, please.
What's the difference between logical incoherence and logical contradictory?
Okay, so
I'm just wondering, Vin. That's an honest question.
Wait. First plank is he doesn't use that term, does he?
He says logical incoherence. Yes.
Okay. Wait. Does he use the term logically contradictory? Yes or no?
He uses the term logical incoherence. That's what I
just
told you.
My brother, I need you to help me.
Then
I let you. We'll talk about the difference in a moment. I let you go the whole time, didn't interrupt you once. I was a really good guy. Now, Jake, I'm asking you a yes or no question. Please answer my question. Did WLC or the brother before you mentioned, did any of them use the term logically contradictory, yes or no?
No, they said logical incoherence.
Okay, now please reread. Please reread. Okay, so nobody said it was logically contradictory. Please reread to us the segment where he said incoherent.
Okay, so he said, if these declarations are intended to imply that statements like the Father is God are identity statements, then they threaten the doctrine of the Trinity with logical incoherence.
I agree.
I can go on further.
Okay, now stop. I agree with that statement from William Lane Craig, insofar as if you're trying to collapse the persons of the Father, Son, and Spirit into the being as if they were unipersonal, then it absolutely threatens the doctrine of the Trinity. Now, you made a statement.
Yusuf,
I got my.
Can you pause it? Okay. Yeah, it's probably hard for you to hear me. So when I read back the quote to him, and I'll just read it in front of me because it says, let me see, because I don't want to get it wrong. He said, if these declarations are intended to imply that statements like the Father is God are identity statements, then they threaten the doctrine of the Trinity with logical incoherence. And Vin said, I agree. But you'll see that, Vin, no, you actually don't agree, because your presentation is claiming and making identity statements. When you say the Father is God, you are saying that the Father is identical to God. When you say that the Son is God, you are saying that the Son is identical to God. These are identity statements, but Vin doesn't even recognize that, so he doesn't see that William Lane Craig is actually attempting to refute Vin's position. But that becomes more clear later on, because then Vin winds up contradicting himself, and we'll see that.
Am I pressing play here or skipping?
Yeah, you can press play. Yeah.
Version of the Trinity, maybe from my head or something like that.
I didn't say that. I don't know where you got it from.
You don't know where I got it from. See,
I have no idea.
This is what
I have no idea.
What is amazing. You have
have
no idea. Okay.
Meaning,
okay.
Vin, I was not with you in your studies to say you read this.
See, he's not listening to you. You're clarifying. You're clarifying what you meant. He's like, I don't know where you got it from because I wasn't with you.
And
he's not listening to you. He's not.
He's doing that little Beavis and Butthead giggle as well. Have you heard it?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I was not with you.
Yeah. It's frustrating.
Yeah, but I mean, he goes on with this whole tangent for like a few minutes, so I don't know how much of you could play a little bit more.
We'll play a little bit. We won't play all of it because it just.
You have no idea. Okay.
Meaning, Vin, I was not with you in your studies to say you read this or you understood it this way.
And
it's
impossible to get a point in. This scene is important. I mean, we can go on for a few seconds, but what I'm saying is, it's impossible for you to make your point. He's not listening, and you try and again.
Yeah, and then Abdul, you'll see at 108. Where are we at now? 107.
7:23.
Okay, play at least from here until about a minute or an hour and 9 minutes, at least till that point, because during the next minute, after I'm saying what I'm saying now, he says that Jake wanted to know where Vin gets this distinction between being and person from. That's what he says, when I never asked that at all, which is a complete straw man and misrepresentation. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Let me just mentally prepare myself to press play.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure now. Okay. And what people are, ladies and gentlemen, what you're looking at is what's known as the Athanasian Creed. Okay. So brother is extremely well read, but apparently he's never read the Athanasian Creed because he doesn't know where
when did I say that I didn't read the Athanasian Creed?
Well, you said you didn't know where I got my formulation from.
I said to you that I don't know where exactly you came up with this idea from. That's what I said.
And
then is it possible that
Jake,
you could have?
Please let me read my selection. Holy,
he doesn't want to listen.
And it's really.
And he's trying to make it. Sorry,
it's even more aggravating when someone is constantly interrupting and not letting someone make a point while making the claim that that's what the other person's doing. And he does this, especially towards the last hour. Like it gets to a point where it's just like it's hurting your heart. You're just hearing him getting frustrating, not listening, interrupting, and then projecting all of this onto Jake. And then seeking confirmation from the missus, like,
and he's trying to make it seem like Jake is cutting him off. Which I mean, it is Vin's turn to talk, but right now, this point, Jake is just trying to tell him, Vin, stop. That's not what I'm saying, man. Like,
there's no point going down this route. That's not my point. If I say, I don't know where you got it from, and what I mean by that is that. And you even make it clear you weren't there when he received this information, and so you don't know whether it was from a book, from a teacher, from the internet, from a YouTube.
And you have to understand that he did say all he needs is the Bible, so he could have just got it from the Bible, but then he goes to Athanasian Creed.
And Jake explicitly stated, after saying he thought it up, he explicitly stated other people who mention it. So Jake knows that it's mentioned. He's not saying it's like nonsense or anything. Right. And the problem is he uses this to go off on a tangent when Jake just finished a 4-minute presentation about the actual problem, and I was like, okay, we're gonna get into the substance of this, and Vin is going to interact with it and break it down. But no, we're talking about how Jake said Vin thought the formulation up when Jake didn't even mean that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I get a pit in my stomach listening to this kind of stuff.
Go ahead.
Possible that you could have...
Was that the video or was that Jake?
It was
the video.
Okay.
For 5 minutes.
Is it possible that you could have read Peter Van Inwagen?
Jake, please let me read my selection.
Exactly. Right? Everybody can see that.
Let me read my selection. Can I read my selection? Okay, so he says, I don't know where Vin got his information from. I don't know where he got it from.
Yeah,
okay?
why would I lie? I'm not going to lie.
So, well, I mean, that's between you and Allah.
Yeah,
cringy statements.
He tries to do this all the time, and it's just I don't like it.
It didn't even sound that. It didn't even sound that confident when he says it. Like,
I don't know where Vin got his information from. I don't know where he got it from.
Yeah,
okay?
why would I lie? I'm not going to lie.
So, well, I mean,
that Beavis Butthead laugh again.
That's between you and Allah. Okay, this is where.
Yeah. So again, accusing him of dishonesty and the same thing.
Poison in the well.
He's been doing it quite frequently, saying Muslims out there are lying. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
Look at mashallah, he's pulling out all the quality poses on this, isn't he? Look at that one. That's an advert for that hat. That.
Yeah, Justin's like, dude, you've been doing this all night.
He's just striking quality poses throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, man.
Oh, bless him.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'm not gonna lie.
Here's the Athanasian Creed. You must not be familiar with the creed there. Please let me read it.
Vin, you weren't even familiar with relative identity Trinitarianism. So let's be honest, you're not even equipped for the conversation.
Jake, let me
You're not
read.
Equipped.
Jake, can I read?
You're not equipped for the convo.
Jake, can I read now?
Yeah, you can read.
Okay, so Jake wanted to know where I got this idea that there's a distinction between.
This is the part. This is the key part here. You gotta just move it back 5 seconds, and then this is the key part. He says, "Well, Jake wanted to know where I got the distinction between being and person from." This is what he says, and I never said it.
She's enabling him as well.
You're not equipped for the convo, then.
Jake, can I read now?
Yeah, you can read.
Well, okay. So Jake wanted to know where I got this idea that there's a distinction between the nature and persons of God. Where did you get this from? Now,
I never said that.
He's presenting himself as the person who's
never said that.
Now, Jake,
we only need the Bible. Here's the Athanasian Creed.
He says that Jake wanted to know. It changed from, well, Jake acted like I was making this up, to Jake didn't know about the Athanasian Creed, to now Jake was asking me where I got this distinction between nature and person from. When did I ever say that? I mean, it's just ridiculous. This is absolute straw man.
And you can't stop him. You can't stop him. Play it.
And because this is the thing, like I can understand if someone's making a genuine point about something you said, it's very frustrating when someone's interrupting you. But if you're listening to someone completely reconfigure and transform the content of whatever you've been claiming throughout the discussion to something else, and it's quite obvious, especially to anyone who was watching, that isn't what you meant and that's not what you said. And not only that, he's like transforming it according to his understanding as well several times. Then that is a perfectly valid point in which you can interrupt and say, hold on, that's not my point. There's no point going into this because it's irrelevant, because that's not what I was saying. That's not what I meant. You're arguing, you're going in a direction no one's going in, apart from you here, apparently. Like at that point, it's fine to interject. But there was some Christians in the comments, and they were making it out as if like pointing out that this moment was okay to interrupt him was somehow some sort of favoritism. It's
and this is the point, Yusuf. It's coming up within the next minute of where he tells Justin, you gotta moderate, and then I get upset. I call Vin a charlatan, and then it kind of devolved. But the next 10 minutes, I think we should kind of just go through it, because that's where I think the crux of, after Vin calms down, if he ever does, but the next 10 minutes is really where the crux of the discussion is, where I think Vin doesn't understand what's going on in the objection. But go ahead.
Oh, I'm pressing the StreamYard screen and not the video.
When you keep misquoting me,
Justin, you got him. Justin,
you keep putting words in my mouth.
I'll moderate. So I will keep you guys from over talking to each other. But when somebody says something, they're claiming that somebody else said something.
There's lots of
call that out.
Vin, what you're doing, Vin, you're very
said
clever.
that I
Vin, you're
disagree
very
with.
clever. Vin, you're very clever.
Thought I
What you
wasn't
do
equipped.
is what you do, Vin. No, you're
I'm clever,
equipped as
but
a
I'm not
you're equipped as a charlatan. That's what you're equipped with. But the point, Vin, the point is what you do very cleverly, and I'll give it to you. You're very clever.
This
What
has
you
nothing
do,
to do with
what
the
you do,
Athanasian
Vin,
Creed.
what you
Justin,
do.
Stop him.
Then what you do is
Justin,
I say
stop him.
something. I say something, and then you take my words, you change them slightly, say that I said
Justin.
this, and then you present something to the contrary. That's
Justin,
what you
got to moderate,
continuously
bro.
have done.
I let him go for
Yeah,
5 minutes.
but here's the thing. I didn't moderate earlier when you derailed the conversation, so I'm going to let him go.
Okay. Well, if we're gonna do
Go ahead,
that,
Vin.
then we're gonna do that, right?
Go ahead, Vin.
Okay.
Can you just pause for a
Let
second?
him get it out from now
No, that's
on.
what-
This is where it gets really messed up, and I just want to say because I felt really bad after this debate because I played a role in setting this up. And if you watch if you watch Jake's debates on his channel, he has very respectful debates with top academics. And I didn't know this was going to turn out like this. I was expecting this to be a good discussion.
Bro, this affected everyone. Everyone. Like,
Yeah.
Even the comment section went to hell. Like,
Yeah.
subhanAllah.
the reason you guys need to focus on the reason it's going to this. Look how long it's been right now where Jake is trying to stop Vin from speaking because he wants to go off on a tangent about something Jake didn't say at all. And what minute is it right now? It's 1 hour.
It's a minute and 10 minutes. An hour and 10 minutes.
And 10 minutes, and all
Vin's
has
been doing
been
it the
said
whole
about the
time.
substance of the debate is that Vin made a distinction between the categories being in person, went on to say he rejects Leibniz's law of identity, and that's it. Jake presented something for 4 minutes. He's been trying to question him, and for 1 hour and 10 minutes, we got nowhere.
SubhanAllah.
So that's why the discussion went to this, and I was like, "This is a disaster." Jake can't get a word in, but yeah.
Yeah, I think somewhere during this as well, I went from not being a moderator to becoming a moderator. I think Justin might have made me one like mid debate, and I was so frustrated watching this. I had a huge headache. I was tired of it, and like I think at one point I was even like, "Cut this! It needs to end now." And then it went on for even longer, and it was like, "Nah."
And by the way, something important to say is that all our Christian friends, like, kind of saw right through this. I mean, none of them said anything bad about Vin or anything, but then they saw that Vin ruined the debate, with the exception of one friend, to be honest. Yeah. Everybody else saw right through this, and even in the comment section, you can see. I think some people in the comment section were supporting Vin. I'm talking about our immediate circle. Everybody saw right through this. Even people who I expected to be like, Vin did well or something because of how loud he was throughout the whole debate. But everybody saw right through this. So at least I'm happy that.
I mean, I was in real time, everything we're saying now, I was pointing out in real time every step of the way when Vin was doing this. That's why people could see it, but some people may not be able to do that, and Vin could get away with it in a discussion.
Yeah,
and it's very frustrating when people go, "Oh, you're only saying this because you're a bunch of muzzies and you got each other's back." It's like, bro. Yeah. The thing is when a brother's not doing well and it's clear, we're the first people to jump on that and say, "Listen, this ain't the best approach," because it's all about like presenting this properly. And if someone's doing a bad job, you don't want to tell them they've done a good job so that they keep going on making the same bleeming mistakes. So this idea that we don't critique our brothers when they're making huge flaws or errors or this or that is absurd. It's absolutely absurd. It's not beneficial for the dawah at all. And if anything, we have more of a motivation to critique them and call them up on their mistakes than the enemies. It's just a tiring point. So how do you want me to play here, or do you want me to skip to a point?
Give me 1 second. Where are we at now? 1
hour, 10 minutes and 6 seconds.
Yeah,
we're only halfway through. We're nearly 2 hours in. How long do you want to do?
No. We only need to get from here until like 1:30. So we don't even need to do the last half hour because Vin pieced out, and then I just did my, debate review on the debate. So it's only these next 10 minutes are really
That's a impressed face that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's only really the next 10 minutes and then one other part that's important. So just see if we could power through the next 10 minutes.
Do you want me to 2 times speed or 1.5?
Do 1.5. Yeah.
That's what we're doing. Okay, so now we're going to moderate after. Okay. Jake, you going to let me read? Here's the Athanasian Creed. My brother Jake must not be familiar with it. Whosoever will be saved before all things, it is necessary that he hold to the Catholic faith. Which faith, except everyone do keep the whole and undefiled without doubt, he shall perish everlastingly. And the Catholic faith is this, that we should worship one God in Trinity and Trinity in unity, neither confounding the persons or dividing the substance. For there is one person of the Father, another of the Son, another of the Holy Spirit, but the Godhead of the Father, the Son, of the Holy Spirit is all one, the glory equal, the majesty co-eternal. Such as the Father is, such is the Son, and such is the Holy Spirit. The Father uncreated, the Son uncreated, the Holy Spirit uncreated, the Father incomprehensible, the Son incomprehensible, the Holy Spirit incomprehensible, the Father eternal, the Son eternal, the Holy Spirit eternal. And yet there are not 3 eternals, but 1 eternal. So this whole thing, Vin, you was a God from his head. No, this is the Athanasian Creed.
Never said.
Oh, I thought it was you talking again. Oh, I keep getting confused.
This is the Athanasian Creed from the 4th century. Okay, so secondly,
not from the 4th century.
Secondly,
the 8th century.
Sorry, the 8th century. Okay. Secondly, he said that. Well, you said Gregory of Nazianzus was the president of the Council of Nicaea.
I never said that.
Yeah, you did. If you can.
When did I?
Yeah. So this is the point here because Vin doesn't even know, and he didn't even realize because he quoted the Athanasian Creed in his first original, which was the genesis of this whole thing, in his response to Justin, was him just basically reading the Athanasian Creed and saying there's a distinction between being in person and that's it. The argument's stupid. He didn't even realize, and he still doesn't know, that the Athanasian Creed, we don't even actually know who wrote it. Vin thinks that Athanasius wrote it in the 4th century, but it's actually an 8th century document that was penned in Athanasius's name that we don't even know that he actually wrote it. I mean, and this is Christian scholarship will tell you this. So Vin didn't even know that. I had to correct him. He thought it was 4th century. But go ahead.
I think. Well, let me just put it back a couple of seconds because he did.
He makes an accusation against me that I made a mistake about St. Gregory claiming that he was the president at the Council of Nicaea when he was really the president at the Council of Constantinople. When I know that, and he wasn't in this discussion, he's saying that I supposedly said it in another debate and discussion. Maybe I misspoke and said Nicaea instead of Constantinople, but I know it was Constantinople in 381, and I pointed that out even in the video. In fact, he was the president of the council until he basically got fed up and he left. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll just put it back because he does concede when you say 8th century pretty quickly.
So yeah, he concedes because I think they've got Google there, so they're looking it up.
This is the Athanasian Creed from the 4th century. Okay, so secondly,
not from the 4th century.
Secondly,
the 8th century.
Sorry, the 8th century. Okay. Secondly,
so he was looking down when he said that.
Yeah,
is he looking at a tablet or something? Or
I don't know because I think I said it earlier at another point, and I think they probably already looked it up.
I think he had a notepad as well because he's got a pen in his hand and he was writing.
Yeah.
So when he said 8th century, he'd conceded without even looking at his computer screen. So I think it wasn't from Google. I think he knew it was 8th century.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering why he said 4th.
He said that, well, you said Gregory of Nazianzus was the president of the Council of Nicaea.
I never said that.
Yeah, you did.
No, I didn't. When did I say that here?
I will post the link to that discussion. Gregory of Nazianzus was born in 329. The Council of Nicaea was 325. You're not
One second.
Yeah,
I mean, just again, like he probably watched. He watched one of Jake's videos, and Jake's videos are all very informative. But what he got out of it, he took out that sentence where Jake might have misspoke, so he can use it in this debate. I mean, come on, man. I mean, it's clear from Jake's debates that he's very well informed on this, way more informed than Vin can be. But then he gets that one point from Jake's video to use it in this debate. That's just. I don't know.
Did he post the link? Where's this link?
It doesn't even matter. I mean,
I know he didn't. I know it doesn't, but it's just the point. He's like he's making this as if it's important, but it obviously wasn't that important because he didn't follow it up.
Yeah.
Because Jake corrected him on the spot, so it's clear that. Yeah.
Constantinople. He was president of Constantinople.
You said Nicaea.
Oh, maybe I misspoke then. I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect.
Okay.
I'm not perfect.
So
he doesn't getting him back with the slidings now after all of that as well. So I think as well because at this point you were very frustrated.
Well, because I know,
because I can't talk to people.
I know for a fact that he was actually the president at Constantinople.
Yeah.
I know that. So if I said that in another discussion, I just misspoke. I know who he is.
But the thing is, though, I think he was waiting at least for you to start giving him digs back. Because at this point, it's here where it all starts going downhill. Because you've gotten to a point where
you got to understand, Yusuf, the reason why it went downhill here is because, mind you, it's after my 4-minute explanation of when I give my argument. Yeah. Vin realizes he can't respond to it, so he tries to totally derail it. And that's when it goes downhill.
No. But he's using now your like sly remarks back to him as motivation to sort of make this roll down the hill into a fire pit even quicker. Because I guess that at that point, once it gets to the point that it gets to, he's got the motivation to just leave then. And then just kind of point and go, look, I told you, look what he's doing. He's being very unreasonable. It's like, bro, you've just spent the past hour and 10 minutes, just talking in the most convoluted and annoying way and constantly trying to poison the well and constantly giving sly digs. And then at the end, you start giving them back. And then it's like, oh, wow, how dare he?
So Spurious, please stop interrupting. Spurious was
what did I miss?
Yeah, he was president at Constantinople. He was president at Constantinople.
You said Nicaea.
Oh, maybe I misspoke then. I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect.
Okay.
I'm not perfect.
So Spurious, please stop interrupting. Spurious was used, but he agreed there's no logical contradictory charge in any of the things that he read. Here in the Athanasian Creed, which predated both Jake and I, we see clearly here that the formulation of being and person and the distinctions that are made there are the doctrine of the Christian church from Athanasius. Athanasius told us he got this from the scripture, which is clearly elucidated in Matthew 28, which is why my friend Jake refused to answer the question. That's why there was that long pause after I asked the question.
No, it wasn't. Because ask me the question. Ask me the question again. What's your question?
What is the proper name of God the Father in the Bible?
What does that have to do with the debate? That's what I'm still trying to understand.
He says, ask me the question. Then I asked him the question, and he got it.
Because I'm asking you, what does it have to do with it? That's what I'm trying to understand. You didn't mention this. You didn't mention this.
Wait, you're asking me, I'm going to answer to you.
Yeah,
you're asking me in a discussion.
Yeah, so this weirded me out a bit because he says, what's the proper name of God the Father in the Bible? That seemed really random to me. Like when you said, ask me the question, I assumed he was going to ask you something that he'd already said. And then this came out of the woodworks. Like, did I miss something? Or it just seemed random.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
It was completely unrelated. I mean, that's what Jake is saying.
He might as well have said, like, ask me the question. He's like, right, what's your favorite color? So what?
Yeah.
You're not answering. Why are you not answering? It's like, well, because I thought you were going to ask me a question that was related to the bleeming the hour conversation we've just been having. Not somewhat inconsequential to the whole.
Yeah, exactly. I think at this point we need to power through because it's already obvious to everybody.
Yeah, just let it play and go till like 1:20.
That's 8 minutes, bro. 7 minutes.
Yeah, put it on.
Formulas has to do with the discussion on the Trinity.
No, I'm asking, what does it have to do with what I'm actually saying? I'm not making any claim about the name of God.
You and I are having a discussion on the Trinity. Matthew 28 has one of the earliest Trinitarian formulas in the Bible.
Then can I interact with what you just read from the Athanasian Creed?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Well, first. Is Athanasius' version of the Trinity identical to my version of the Trinity?
I have to actually say I'm not well read enough to make that statement definitively. I can't say that because this is what I'll say.
Wait, is it true or false that Athanasius makes a distinction between ousia and person?
Well, I'll answer you. This is supposedly, and it's called the Athanasian Creed, but we don't actually know that Athanasius wrote it. So I'm not going to.
I didn't ask you about who wrote it. I'm asking about the content of the Creed.
If Athanasius didn't write this, because it's actually an 8th century document, okay, then I cannot commit to whether or not Athanasius.
That's fine. I don't care about Athanasius. The person who wrote that creed, he believes in the same version of the Trinity as me. Isn't that true?
Pause the video 1 second.
Okay, continue.
Yeah, because he said he was asking about Athanasius, and then when I said, well, I can't tell you based on this because we don't know that he actually wrote it, then he said, well, that's fine. I don't care about Athanasius. Well, that's what you're just asking me about Athanasius. But go ahead, play it.
So back to that. the thing that I quoted from William Lane Craig, he actually mentions the Athanasian Creed. Okay, so again, he said the so-called Athanasian Creed, which is an 8th century document, enjoins Christians to acknowledge, and this is a quote, every person by himself to be God and Lord. If these declarations are intended to imply that the statements "the Father is God" are identity statements, which in Vin's formulation they are, then they threaten. Yes, they are. Then they threaten the doctrine. Then they, which is an identity statement. You're saying it's like they're identical. No, it doesn't. Vin, then it shows.
I think we should put this at normal speed.
Yeah, put it at normal speed and put it back like 20, 30 seconds. This is the crux of the discussion right here.
Just I'm really weird at normal speed now. Always does.
Yeah.
Joins Christians to acknowledge, and this is a quote, every person by himself to be God and Lord. If these declarations are intended to imply that the statements "the Father is God" are identity statements, which in Vin's formulation they are, then they threaten. Yes, they are. Then they threaten the doctrine. Then they, which is an identity statement. You're saying it's like they're identical. You're
pause. He said they're not identity statements. They're statements about person. So again, he doesn't even understand what identity statement is. Because when you say what's called an is of identity, there's two types of ises in English: is of identity or is of predication. When you say, for example, that Jake is the Muslim metaphysician, you are saying that those two things are identical. Jake is identical to the Muslim metaphysician. If I say that Jake is happy or something like that, this is an is of predication. It's an attribute that I'm using to describe me. Now, Vin doesn't understand what identity means. He thinks that when I read the quote from William Lane Craig, that he's not actually critiquing his position, when every other Christian who knows the subject that I've spoken to agreed with me. Now, they might not agree with William Lane Craig's rejection of relative identity Trinitarianism, because some people hold it, but to deny that he is critiquing it is just pure ignorance. And Vin makes the statement here about identity statement refers to person. He thinks it's some kind of like semantic thing that, a person is this or a person is that. Vin doesn't understand that identity is a universal thing that applies to all different things. It could apply to a rock. It could apply to a goat. It doesn't have to do with a person. It has to do with being.
Yeah, this was one of the most embarrassing parts for me, because if you're coming into a debate about the logical problem of the Trinity, you don't know what identity is. I think that's just, I don't know, man. I it's embarrassing.
Really bad. But go ahead and play it unless you want to say something, Yusuf.
No, I was just going to say, I think, again, this is just highlighting that he's ignorant of the problems. And so this sort of shows his confidence, or the reason for his confidence, at least anyway. Because, subhanAllah.
Are you saying this is Dunning-Kruger?
Yeah, that's probably the best way of saying it. He's dipped his toes into a subject and he's not hit the peak yet, and so he's gotten a lot of confidence because he's sort of increased his knowledge base. But it's a result of him only having dipped his toes into it, and I think and you can sort of, or maybe he's just at the peak. Because he often comes across as a little bit unconfident in certain bits as well, where it's like a bit awkward, and he makes these sort of sly remarks. And I don't know, man. Like I do.
I mean, no, it doesn't. Vin, then this shows you don't even know what identity means. Identity is not limited. Identity is not.
See, so he was saying, "Don't interrupt," but he doesn't hold to his own principle here. Like,
even know what identity means. Identity is not limited. Identity is not limited to being or person.
My brother, I never said. Well, Jake, hold on. This is important. This is actually important. Did I ever say it was limited that way?
He literally just said that it's limited to
person. He said it's a person.
Yeah. So identity statements, which in Vin's formulation they are, then they threaten. Yes, they are. Then they threaten the doctrine.
Statements of being.
Then which is an identity statement. You're saying it's like they're identical.
So again, when I say they're identity statements, he says They're statements of being, which he thinks because they're supposed statements of being that they can't be identity statements.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to say they're not statements of identity. They're statements of the identity statements have
it's not a statement of being. Identity is a statement of personhood.
Exactly. So he contrasts them and he says it can't be because it's a statement of being, which shows he doesn't understand what identity is. But then when I catch him out and I'm very forceful in saying, Vin, you don't know,
Trinity.
then he flip-flops and goes back.
Yeah, and you can see it is within a second here. And this is mad.
They threaten, yes, they are. Then they threaten the doctrine.
They're statements of being.
Then they, which is an identity statement. You're saying it's like they're identical.
So you said they're identity statements with regards to being, and he said no, identity has to do with person. And then what?
It's an explicit statement. I mean,
yeah. He's making the claim that identity by necessity can't be to do with being because it's to do with personhood.
It gets worse. He contradicts himself again, but go ahead.
Then this shows you don't even know what identity means. Identity is not limited. Identity is not limited to being or person.
My brother, I never said. Well, Jake, hold on. This is important. This is actually important.
It is important, Vin. Very important.
Did I ever say it was limited that way?
Yes, literally the last thing you said. The very last thing. SubhanAllah.
You just said that it's applied to person and not being.
In the context of the chart that I showed you, was there a distinction in identity between being and person, yes or no?
Vin, let me explain to you what identity is.
Jake, can you answer the question?
Vin, you don't understand what identity means.
Okay, here's what we're going to do. Jake,
let me explain it to you.
If you refuse to answer my questions.
See, this is where it just really starts getting really annoying because you're both just sort of talking over each other.
Yeah, but it gets worse because Vin brings up his chart or his slides to try to back him up, but then within
and it makes it worse.
It makes it worse because the very thing that he was talking about, he says he makes identity statements about the being because he uses the word identical. Yeah, but go ahead.
I'm gonna have to end the conversation.
Let me explain to you what identity
Jake,
actually means.
Explain it to me, Jake. Explain
you don't understand what identity means, Vin.
Jake,
it's clear. You said that identity was the person and not the being.
Explain it to me after you answer my question, right? That's all you have to do. Answer my question, and then you can go to your explanation. Isn't it true that in the semantic domain of identity, that personhood falls within the semantic domain of identity? Yes or no?
Yeah.
So does being. Yep.
I agree. But so that's a yes, right?
Did he say
now he says he agrees. That's what I'm saying. He contradicted himself because I said yeah, but both of them do.
So he's asking you that question as if it's you who denied that personhood falls under the semantic domain of identity.
Yeah, I was just saying, Vin, don't stop there. It also applies to person, my brother. Being, my brother. Yeah.
That personhood falls within the semantic domain of identity. Yes or no?
So does being. Yep.
I agree. But so that's a yes, right?
They both do. Yep.
Yep. So in the context of my chart, I was using the application of identity in the personal sense. Isn't that true?
Yes, but not merely that. Use it for being.
No, I did not. Yes, you're using that. I didn't.
Okay, so can I explain why I think you are?
Yeah. Pause. Can I pause? So he says no, he did not, and now when he goes to the chart, it's clear that he actually did. Watch this.
Yeah.
I explain why I think you're using it as an identity.
Hold on. Let Jake give an explanation.
Well, hold on. When he says explanation, he says why I think you are. So I'm going to make something very clear.
Because I need to explain what I mean by identity. Then,
Justin, hold on.
We're on different
pages right now. Yes, we are. Right. So this is what I want to clarify. Then you can go. Jake and I both agree that within the semantic domain of the term identity, it can mean nature. It can also mean person, and it can mean both. I agree. What I was doing was I was applying the term identity to the persons of the Trinity. That's what I was doing. Jake admitted that that's within the semantic domain. Now, if Jake doesn't want to use identity the same way, that's completely fine. But I'm referring to the chart that I did at the beginning with my presentation. Where he said there was no contradiction.
Vin, I'm going to need need 2 minutes to break down for you and the audience what identity is. So please just let me explain it. Okay.
Well, identity is to you.
No, I'm going to explain what identity is in the understanding of philosophers and logicians. That's what I'm going to explain.
Well, not all philosophers, right?
Yes.
What is the point of even saying that? It offers nothing to the discussion, pointing out that there's some annoying philosopher somewhere. This is like every subject. There's a philosopher that disagrees on something. They're renowned for, like, you'll have something that everyone agrees on, and then the philosopher will just come along for the sake of it and go, but hold on a second. If everyone agrees in this, there's probably a reason here why we should question it. So I'm going to, for the sake of it, disagree with it just to open up the dialogue. Like, so what?
Yeah.
It's annoying.
Yeah. After we get to 120, which is just 2 more minutes, there's only one more point, which is on what you said, Yusuf, which is literally like 10 seconds. And then that's it. We can close the stream. So go ahead.
So I'm going to explain
certain philosophy.
This is what classical identity is. And I'm reading from my notes here, Vin, because I don't want to make a mistake because you jump all over me. So identity.
And then he takes the opportunity to try to do it right here.
Identity is a relation. Okay, Vin, you don't even know what identity.
And the little victory drink of his.
Yeah. No. He keeps drinking because he's nervous, dude. If you go back and watch the whole debate, he's constantly moving. He's constantly jittery.
I don't think there's anything in that can anymore.
He keeps drinking it. Yeah. He noticed once I start giving my argument, that's the time he's drinking the most.
From my notes here, Vin, because I don't want to make a mistake because you jump all over me. So identity is a relation. Okay, Vin. You don't even know what identity is, my brother.
Okay, hold on. Let's not jump into that.
Identity.
He took another swig.
Oh, this is the cringiest bit where he's like, Justin, you gotta control your boy, man.
Yeah.
Control your boy.
But in the next minute, it gets really bad because Vin just, in this point, to me, this is where Vin loses the whole debate. Go ahead.
Identity.
Oh, come on, man. He lost
so you can allow me to explain it? Identity is a relation. Okay, it means to be the same or numerically identical.
There's that moment as well where it's like his smile is sort of feigned and then it wears off. Like almost instantly, because you can see he's putting on this like I'm trying to be. And there's another bit where he's like he does this sort of feigned niceness to sort of, I guess, make up for like how of a horrible discussion this has been. And then like, and it looks like he's trying to force this smile so that he looks like someone who's like chilled and happy, and then like you just see it drop instantly, and it's like, this isn't a sincere smile, man.
Hold on, let's not jump into that.
Identity
Justin,
is a
you gotta
relation.
control your boy.
I gotta control your boy, man.
He's interrupting me, and he wants Justin to control me.
I know. It's so annoying.
It's crazy.
So here he's smiling. Watch it just drop.
Explaining this, so you can allow me to explain it. Identity is a relation. Okay, it means to be
that moment there, man. Like, like he's not enjoying this either. No. Like
the same or numerically identical when two things are being compared. Okay,
they really dittoed each other then as well.
Oh, anyone like this?
Both of them at the same time. Watch, like as if they were
the same or numerically identical when two things are being compared. Okay. The second thing is identity is transitive. This means that if A is identical to B and B is identical to C, then it follows that A is identical to C. Identity is also symmetrical, which means if A is identical to B, then B is identical to A. Identity is also reflexive, which means it's a relation that can only apply to a thing in itself. An example of this in English grammar is the word myself. Okay. The last thing, which is what we talked about, Leibniz's law, assumes what's called indiscernibility. Okay. This means that two things cannot be identical if they differ at any time or differ timelessly in the case of God. Now, the formulation of Leibniz's law is that X and Y are identical if and only if any predicate or property P possessed by X is also possessed by Y and vice versa. So these explanation of what identity is, it can apply to things like person and being. When I say that you are making an identity claim about the Father being God, when you say that the Father is God, you are saying that the Father is, meaning identical to God. And then you also say that the Son is God, meaning that he's identical to God. The Holy Spirit is God, meaning that he is identical to God. So you are making, and God in that equation by your own chart equals the being of God, in which each one of the persons individually are identical to the one.
So if you go back, if you just listen really closely when I say the Father is God is an identity statement, the Son is God is an identity statement, the Holy Spirit is God is an identity statement, he says, sure. We'll just roll it back like 20 seconds, even though that's everything that he just denied.
Claim about the Father being God. When you say that the Father is God, you are saying that the Father is, meaning identical to God. And then you also say that the Son is God, meaning that he's identical to God. The Holy Spirit is God, meaning that he is identical to God.
And he says, sure. He says, sure, right here.
So you are making, and God in that equation by your own chart equals the being of God, in which each one of the persons individually are identical to the one being of God, which means that you are making identity statements about these persons being the one being of God.
Whoa, Jake, Jake, I'm gonna do my share screen again. This is unbelievable. This now shows me. I was like, man, this brother really has not been paying attention to me.
That moment.
Yeah, go ahead. Watch it.
Oh, Jake,
I am. Show me what I was wrong about.
Here's where you're wrong, and I'm going to quote it: "To be the same thing." That was the first definition you gave us within the semantic domain of the term identity. Okay.
Numerically identical. Yep.
They are numerically identical. Here we go. The Father's being is the Most High Divinity. The Son's being is identical. I am saying the.
Oh my God!
It's strange as well because he's saying that like it's the opposite of what you've just been saying.
Exactly.
After he says this shows he doesn't pay attention.
Yeah.
And it's like, bro, like I just to make it clear, yeah. So we're gonna watch his now. We'll put it back and just let him say, let you say what you've just said again. And anyone who's watching now, just keep an eye on this. So he's making it sound like everything that Jake has just been saying, maybe he's zoned out, but this is important. So just keep an eye. Everything that Jake has just been saying is the opposite of what he's saying now, that the Son is identical to the Father.
Yeah. Even though I just said that and he just agreed to it, but then he said, you're claiming I'm making identity statements. No. When you just said yes 2 seconds ago, and now you go and read it and you're reading identity statements.
Yeah. Ironically, identical to what you said.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoa. It said the same thing. I am saying that the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are the same thing. And
yes,
as
identical,
here,
you said identical.
All right, so let's go back.
In which each one of the persons individually are identical to the one being of God, which means that you are making identity statements about these persons being the one being of God. And are identical for making a property P in the case of God. Now, the formulation of Leibniz's law is that X and Y are identical if and only if any predicate or property P possessed by X is also possessed by Y and vice versa. So these explanation of what,
which is funny as well, because he says he rejects Leibniz's law.
Yeah.
But then isn't by end up when he like concedes to this bit?
Yeah,
is that not him agreeing to Leibniz's law?
Yeah. He contradicts himself.
Yeah, it's almost as if,
Yeah.
The logical.
So it's almost as if he's trying to rationalize it right now using the law.
Yeah.
But then he rejects.
You know what? You know what I think really happened. What I think really happened, and once this little bit is over, I'm gonna close it out with this explanation. But what I think happened is Vin came in with a particular model. It is something that's represented in the literature, but it is a minority view. That doesn't mean that it's incorrect, but most analytic Christian philosophers disagree with it because it goes against classical logic and identity. And that's what William Lane Craig is critiquing. Now, what really set Vin off, I think, he didn't say this, but I think that Vin likes Dr. Craig, and that when I was reading a quote from him that made it seem like he was contradicting Vin and criticizing Vin's view, he got defensive about it and tried to say, no, Dr. Craig is saying something else. But then when it became more clear that Dr. Craig was actually critiquing his view and that I was backing that up, then Vin was all out of whack and he didn't know what to do. He just was going back and forth.
I think this is what he was doing when he was writing his notes. It's like...
I went, yeah.
Subhanallah.
What identity is, it can apply to things like person and being. When I say that you are making an identity claim about the Father being God, when you say that the Father is God, you are saying that the Father is, meaning identical to God.
Right, so the Father is, that is identical to God.
And then you also say that the Son is God, meaning that he's identical to God. The Holy Spirit is God, meaning that he is identical to God. So you are making, and God in that equation by your own chart equals the being of God, in which each one of the persons individually are identical to the one being of God, which means that you are making identity statements about these persons being the one being of God.
Whoa.
I don't even understand what he's going, whoa.
Yeah, because he just agreed to it, and then when I formulated it and put them together, then he said, whoa. But then when he goes to read it, he contradicts himself again.
Jake, I'm gonna do my share screen again. This is unbelievable. This shows me. I was like, man, this brother really has not been paying attention to me at all.
I haven't been paying attention.
I know, man.
I'm the one that's not paying attention. Vin doesn't even realize he's contradicting himself. Go ahead.
I am. Show me what I was wrong about.
Here's where you're wrong, and I'm going to quote it: "To be the same thing."
Yeah.
That was the first definition you gave us within the semantic domain of the term identity. Okay.
Numerically identical. Yep.
They are numerically identical. Here we go. The Father's being is the Most High divinity. The Son's being is identical. I am saying. Whoa. It said the same thing.
Pause it. The Father's being is identical. When he just said that identical or identicality, if that's a word, doesn't apply to being. It applied to person before, remember? It applied to the person, but not the being. But it's actually the opposite. Go ahead, play.
That the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are the same thing. And
yes,
as
identical.
Here,
you said identical.
Please.
You said identical, Vin.
Please.
Vin, you just exposed yourself. You said identical.
No, Jake, this is why you haven't been listening to me, because you're saying
you just said the Son's being is identical to the Father's. You're making an identity statement.
Justin, are you going to moderate this thing at all?
Yeah, and then this is when he gets he starts saying that we're both emotional, and he goes off on Justin. But I mean, Vin exposed himself.
What's he got to moderate here as well at this point?
Yeah, I mean, listen, dude, he exposed himself in the sense he didn't know what he was talking about. He wasn't prepared for the discussion. He didn't know what identity was. He didn't know what the logical laws were. He didn't even realize what view he was representing. And he's trying to pull Justin in it because he's between a rock and a hard place. So he's just grasping at straws to try to do something to get out of this. He feels the magnitude of the point here.
The bit he does there in the middle, in the middle of these blunders that he's been doing like every minute of this entire debate, that bit where he's like, whoa, You know, this brother's not listening. That bit, that's where he tries to, like, you know, get the audience on his side, you know, and give the impression that he's about to, you know, make some kind of a revelation. And that just, you know, goes over some people's heads, because, you know, he makes that noise, and then his point literally contradicts what he just said, but then, you know, the demeanor of it is just kind of he tries to cover up with that.
Yeah.
Vin, lad, what's going on? Like, surely, like, I hope he does watch this, and I hope he's hearing this now. Like, even after we've shown you this and we've gone back and replayed it, go back, watch it again 5-10 times if you need to, but just please, for the love of God, like, aim at truth here. Like, this, admitting this now, again, to reiterate, doesn't mean Christianity isn't true. It doesn't mean you have to take your shahada. It doesn't mean you have to become a Muslim. This isn't even about Jake at this point. It doesn't mean Jake's the winner, although technically it kind of does. But that's not the point here. The point is specifically for your own sake, bro. For your own sake, at least, please just recognize that there was a mistake here. And
yeah, man. And then the next 10 minutes, he goes off on the rails, attacking me, attacking Justin. Then they go back and forth. He threatens to leave. He says he's going to leave like 5 times before he finally does. But the one last point of a clip I wanted to play, and then we could give like our final thoughts on it, was at 1:30:30, which is just like 30 seconds long. Do you mind if I just check to see? Oh no! At this point, he just derails it, doesn't he? Yeah,
he just went off. Derails. I didn't interrupt it.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Wait.
Justin, moderate, please.
Start insulting me on my show.
Don't even play the next part, because Justin kind of gets upset, you know, and he
where am I going to?
Yeah. Just skip to 1:30:30, which, you know, Justin, because Justin could tell, look, dude, you've been acting like this the whole night, and now you're cornered, and you're trying to pull Justin into it and blame him for not moderating when I wasn't even doing anything wrong at that point. It was just bad, man. Yeah, but go to 1:30:30, and this is the last clip.
Statement that Christian theologians, Trinitarian theologians, in the main, believe that it is more than an appearance and an actual contradiction.
None other than the ones that left Trinitarianism because of it.
Thank you.
So this is Vin. This is the.
I appreciate it.
This is the thing.
So you just
the logical problem. This is the logical problem. The logical problem.
He just wants you to sort of.
He's just getting ready to say that I just conceded the debate by admitting that no Trinitarians think that the logical problem of the Trinity it results in an actual contradiction instead of a merely apparent one. Well, Vin, if you think that's like saying, well, Vin, I win the debate by saying that all Muslims who are truly Muslims, they believe in Allah. I mean, that is ridiculous.
It's like we're having a discussion. Is the Quran the word of God? And I'm like, Vin, is there a Muslim or a Muslim scholar who believes that the Quran is not the word of God? And then Vin says no. And I'm like, there you go. You've conceded.
You've conceded the debate.
Come on, man. I mean,
that is desperation, man. And that's what I mean. Does he actually believe that is what wins the debate? I don't know.
But the thing here as well is that, like, he's asking you a question, and so then you answer, and then he's like, he's not allowing you to say anything else. Like, basically, the only involvement in this is it's one way. Like, at this point, he just wants to be able to have the stage, and then just get you to just confirm something or to express some sort of agreement, without any relevance to whether or not.
And then he makes a lot of noise, which makes sense. But then it also seems like he thinks the logical problem of the Trinity is like can only mean that like it is an actual problem. I mean, when Christians say that there's a logical problem of the Trinity, they are saying it's an apparent problem. I mean, the logical problem is an apparent problem. Now, whether it's an actual problem or whether it can move from an actual problem to an apparent problem should be the discussion. And the fact that the Christians, Trinitarians, obviously don't believe it's a logical problem has nothing to do with the discussion. And he's like, thank you, you've conceded the debate because Trinitarians basically think that Trinity is true.
I mean, if that were the case, Vin, I would have given you the debate from the beginning because you're a Trinitarian. You don't believe it's an actual contradiction. All right, Vin, we could have put the thumbnail up and said, you know what? Trinitarian theologians believe in the Trinity. Okay, game over. I mean, that's why Yusuf, I'm trying to give him more credit for his intellect while I say this is deceptive, because I just have a difficult time believing that somebody actually believes that is what wins the debate. It's so hard for me to swallow coming from anybody, especially somebody like Vin. I had more high hopes for him than that.
Well, I guess this is just where the nufsy thing comes in, like when it's kind of got a hold of you and it's like they're squeezing on. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, but that was the last clip for me. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to add in sort of wrapping this up. We've been going for 2.5 hours. People are going to question, well, why did we go so long? I think what people need to understand, if they're not content creators, when you do a review of something and you're playing clips and then you're commenting on it, it takes longer than the actual content of the video. Anyone who doesn't realize that is just not, just doesn't understand how these things work. So when you play something and do commentary on it, it takes longer. And honestly, we could have gone on for another 5 hours with.
We had to cut out a lot.
Also, the reason why the review needed to be done in the first place, I mean, I think from the debate itself, everybody could see through what Vin was doing. I mean, even in the comment section, it was obvious, and all of our Christians friends, with the exception of one, noted the same. But I think the point of the review is that in order
can you clarify that you've got more than 2 Christian friends? Because I can see someone going now. Like they've only got 2. They've only got 2 Christian friends.
We've got a bunch of Christian. We've got a bunch of Christian friends in our inner sort of online circle, and pretty much all of them agreed except for one.
Yeah, right, but you've not got a total of 2. So
we've got more than
We've got more than that. We've got a few, and in the comment sections as well, there were a few Christians on the live debate and the live chat who were also expressing the same thing, although also some were supporting him. But then, so I think it's clear to see what Vin was doing. It's easy to see what Vin was doing in the debate, and Jake didn't really let him have his way, and he was pointing that out. And of course, it was clear, I think, that the reason the debate went downhill is because of Vin's approach to it. But then the reason this breakdown is important, I think, is because you can't see from the debate on its own, like just watching it live, is actually how badly he lost. Like to the extent to which he literally offered nothing, like literally just the presentation, and I reject the law. That's it. Debate is over. Then a while later, I reject it. So I accept it. And then
James said that he's the second Christian friend.
James is one of our Christian friends in that inner circle we're talking about. But then I think the reason it's important to point it out, the reason this video is important is because not a lot of people can see actually how badly he did and how obvious it was that he was avoiding tackling this topic and discussing it with Jake, like the way Jake normally addresses this with other Christians. Because I think if that was done, he wouldn't have had a chance. It's not like he had a chance through the debate, but you can't really see it. You can't really see it. You can't really see how bad it was unless this is broken down. Once you break it down, you actually see that substance-wise, Vin literally didn't make more than like 2 points that were relevant in the debate, which was part of his initial part of his opening presentation, which one of our Christian friends said that he thought the presentation, I think, was good. I mean, I think that breakdown, it was useful. It wasn't really, you know, a revelation because everybody knows about these distinctions, but it was useful. Then he should have, you know, defended his model from there and discussed it, not just, you know, all right, that's it, there's no problem, and from then on just try to avoid any kind of critique. So I think the reason this breakdown is important for that reason, of course.
Yeah, and I think there's a catch-22 here as well. The people that weren't able to see it during the debate and were supporting him still, despite the absolute absurdity of supporting him at this point. Was this a waste of time? Is the next big question. Like, are they likely, if they were going to just sort of jump on his bandwagon?
It was a waste of time. That's why this actually brings something out of it. So I think that's why this review is important as well. So good point.
Or even this review, like if they weren't likely to understand and listen during that debate, which I think is something that was quite clear in and of itself, like, are they likely going to have been convinced? It'd be nice to hear in the comment section if you were someone who watched the debate and were at one point on his side for whatever reason in the heat of the moment. Has watching this changed your mind? If so, leave a comment and let us know, because I want to see. I want to know if there's anyone that's been convinced by this, although, you know, that wouldn't have otherwise if it hadn't been present, just out of interest. But Jake, did you say you wanted me to play that?
Yeah, I wanted you to play that because there's this one other point that I forgot to mention. When Vin was making that distinction earlier about logical incoherence and logically contradictory, we played that clip, and it was from when he asked, well, did WLC ever say that it was logically contradictory? I think Vin doesn't know what that means. Well, he doesn't even know what a law of logic is. And this was the quote. It says, if these declarations are intended to imply that the statements, remember what we just talked about with Vin, this was his detriment, imply that statements like the Father is God are identity statements, then they threaten the doctrine of the Trinity with logical incoherence. And he said, oh no, it's not logically contradictory, it's logical incoherence. And Yusuf, if you could pull up the EA show actual debate video and scroll down, before you bring up that other one, scroll down to the description and see what the title of the discussion was. Because in the description of the video, underneath the, you know, relatively at the beginning, it tells you what the discussion was supposed to be about. And it actually mentions coherence of the Trinity. And I don't know if Vin maybe is naive to it, but that's what the whole thing was about. So let's see. I'm just adding you to the stream now. So scroll down just slightly. Okay, right there. So where it says the EA show, Muslim Metaphysician, and Vin and Sori discuss the coherence of the Trinity. So even if we wanted to grant Vin, for the sake of argument, that coherence or incoherence is different than logically contradictory, even if we wanted to grant that to Vin for the sake of argument, the discussion was the coherence of the Trinity or lack thereof, which is what I'm claiming. Now, let's go and play the video of an actual academic who I disagree with, but I respect and I've had on my show after debating him twice, in which he, in the same debate format and same debate title, is the Trinity coherent? He actually, in the very beginning, addresses that question and tells you what coherence is about, and he relays it to logical contradictions. So go ahead and play it.
Sort of the philosophical deep waters, but hopefully everyone can sort of keep up with what we're saying. So I will be sort of defending the case that the Trinity is coherent. And so for me, I think the most important thing is to understand our terms. So what we mean by coherent and what we mean by the Trinity or the doctrine of the Trinity. So firstly, coherence. I believe something is coherent specifically.
For those who maybe got thrown off of that, the last.
I believe if something's coherent.
Yeah, I believe if something's coherent.
Specifically, a sentence. It's coherent. Specifically, a sentence. If it expresses a proposition that does not entail a contradiction, and so the reverse of that would be a sentence is incoherent if it does express a proposition that entails a contradiction. So an example would be the sentence that there is a married bachelor. The reason why that's incoherent is because it expresses a proposition that entails a contradiction. So the proposition that there is a man who is married and unmarried and things like that. So to sort of show that my case I'm putting forward is incoherent, you'll have to sort of say, well, actually in the sentences that you uttered, there was a entailment of a contradiction. So
okay,
let's go through what I mean by.
So he explains in the context of the debate. The debate is the Trinity coherent? He explains what that means and he relates it to logical contradiction. So there's not this vast difference in what Vin was claiming between the two. And even if you wanted to, for the sake of argument, say that there is a difference, Vin, the discussion and the description, and everybody could see it, is the Trinity coherent? That was the discussion topic. And
he could have, if he wanted to as well, have made an effort to explain why he thought that there was this big difference. Because it was as if the way he was going on about it, it was as if there was no connection between the idea of coherence or incoherence and the idea of something being contradictory. As if there was no bridge to be made between these two concepts whatsoever, and they're worlds apart. And the fact that you've even made this sort of attempt to say that they're in any way synonymous is itself somehow like absurd.
I mean, you're right. If he's gonna say that it's that the logical incoherence is not a problem, again, a good way to go about this would be to have a discussion about that. Jake, what does it mean for something to be logically coherent or incoherent? Calm down. Don't try to just score a point and say, did he say contradictory? Did he say contradictory? That's it. I mean, that's not that discussion with you. And
that was that was move of desperation, honestly.
Yeah,
that was a move of desperation by Vin.
And looking at that discussion with you and Dr. Josh, I mean, that was an amazing discussion. You had 2 discussions with him. And I mean, that's the kind of discussion you want to have, right? And
it's not just with that one particular doctor as well. You've had loads of really good discussions. There was one. What's the other?
And this is a guy, Bo Branson, but this is a guy, Dr. Josh, he's a Trinitarian Christian. His PhD was actually on a logical problem within the Trinity, which was the tritheist objection and how to defend against tritheism. Now, we had a discussion. I debated him twice, once on the incarnation, once on the Trinity. That one was on the Trinity. And subsequently after that, we have been in constant contact, exchanging friendly messages. He's just come on my show, on my YouTube channel, for an interview in which I allowed him to explain his view. I gave him very little pushback, and yet I'm somehow dishonest. I'm the least Muslim, I'm sorry to say, not to prop myself up, but I invite, and to maybe some Muslims not like this, I invite Christian scholars on to explain their view of Christian theology. And I give them a fair shake. I don't just debate them. I interview them and say, hey, this is your view. Why don't you come on and explain it to the audience? And at the same time, I make my own individual videos, maybe critiquing some of their ideas. But I invite them on and give them a voice to explain their view. I'm not dishonestly not allowing the true Trinitarian voice to be heard, or if I have something to hide. I mean, this is just an absurd claim from Vin. It started out that way, seemed like he went in with it, and then he wound up being the thing that he was critiquing me. So, but I mean, that's
a projection, didn't it?
Yeah.
So I think.
Go ahead.
Go on. Yeah.
I was just going to say. Sorry about that. The last thing I was going to say is just this last line from Craig to point out, because Vin didn't think that Craig was criticizing relative identity Trinitarianism or the idea that the Father and the Son could be the same being but different persons. Just listen to this one thing that he says. Finally, even granted relative identity its application to Trinitarian doctrine involves highly dubious assumptions. So he says relative identity Trinitarianism and its application to Trinitarian doctrine involves highly dubious assumptions. Now, what are those highly dubious assumptions? He goes on to tell you, and those highly dubious assumptions are exactly what Vin is claiming. He says, for example, it must be supposed that X and Y, meaning the Father and the Son, can be the identical being without being the identical person. So he says that's what the highly dubious assumption is to presuppose that such a thing is possible, to say that the Father and the Son can be the identical being but be different persons. So Vin, William Lane Craig was critiquing you. You don't have to accept that view that you could say he's wrong, but you cannot deny that he was actually critiquing your view, because he was, and he was saying it threatens the doctrine of the Trinity with logical incoherence. But since Vin could never acknowledge the point, he never gave a valid response to the actual claim.
Yeah. And so this is the thing as well, like it's fine if he disagrees with William Lane Craig. And again, even if he does, this doesn't make Christianity false. It doesn't destroy, that whole religion. It's simply a recognition of is a mistake on his part. That's it. And it's not the biggest mistake. It's not going to be career ending for him. It's not going to make him lose all of his following. He's not going to become the enemy of the state. There's if anything, he's got nothing but to gain. Like, at least he'd maybe even open the opportunity to have a genuine discussion on this in the future. Personally, I don't think there's any point continuing discussing him or talking to him if he can't do that. If he's unable, even if after watching this, and maybe we made it a bit difficult, like, I, for example, I made a few slide remarks about his, when he was laughing. So forgive me if that has been an impediment to you coming to an understanding of your mistake in this regard. We do genuinely want you to move towards a more coherent position, even if you disagree with us, even if at the end of it, you're still a Christian and we're still Muslims and we still have, like, I'm really not bothered about people having disagreements with us. Qadr of Allah, whatever Allah wills, no one can guide other than Allah. So whatever position you end up holding in the end, that's fine. But just please, look at the way you were engaging. Have a watch of Jake's other debates and see how he, acts as an interlocutor with everyone. And then ask yourself the question, why it devolved in your conversation specifically with you and not with every other one. Like,
I think it was first. Of course, it's nothing personal, and I think, I like Vin. I've always liked him. I didn't like the debate, but it's nothing personal. I think we just needed to break it down because it is educational anyway for everybody, and I think we've done a good job. So, yep.
Alhamdulillah. I'm all dried up in terms of commentary now.
Yeah, no, we're good. So guys, I just want to give a quick shout out to somebody here that became a paid subscriber, Brother Ahmed. Ahmed XRP just joined the channel. So if you guys are interested in supporting me and my channel, you can click the join button and get special perks if you become a paid subscriber on YouTube. But I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Brother Ahmed there. And do check out Yusuf Ponders, Pondering Soul YouTube channel if you guys haven't seen it already. And all three of us are involved in TAP, which is the Thought Adventure podcast. So if you guys haven't checked that out by now, I don't know what's wrong with you, but go over there, subscribe, check out our videos, start watching our stuff. All right, guys. But seriously, so check out Brother Yusuf's personal channel. He's doing some good stuff there, mashallah, and definitely check out TAP. We do have an episode coming this Sunday, and it wasn't planned this way because I didn't even know I was going to debate Vin, but it's on the logical problem of the incarnation. So do consider checking that out. With that being said, guys, you guys have any last and final words before I and the stream?
No, just may Allah accept this from us. May forgive us for any lapse that we made or any, like when we were laughing, for example, or when we were poking fun. Maybe we shouldn't have done that in particular. But I'm not even going to bother trying to excuse it. May Allah forgive us for our mistakes. Whatever good we did came from Him. Whatever bad we did came from ourselves. And yeah, may He guide us all on the path to truth and bring us closer to Him. Ameen.
Ameen.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah. And with that being said, guys, until next time, inshallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum.